Then I saw the audience I was attracting, and I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I don't want guys, because for example, right, YOLO douchebag. I made fun of like young kids with flat brim hats that did dumb shit. Cool. So I'm like, I have tons of material on that. And then I go to like PRI, and someone goes douchebag, and I'm like, no, I don't think I want that. You know?
That is a tough one. All right, guys. So today's guest is Alex. He is known as YOLO douchebag for the most part. He works at Lund. He's worked for a lot of other tuning companies. He's been part of the charge, leading the charge against the EPA, and their excessive overreach is the only real definition for what they're doing. And we're going to try to extract some information as to what the EPA is doing and how we as normal citizens maybe can actually help.
Right.
Because that's always the thing, is like, it's so far away feeling. Like, it feels so far away.
I'm blown away that a lot of people, like you say, feel it's so far away, but then when you're in it, how close it can get really fast.
I guess the rule making feels really far away.
Okay.
But then the people that are just following orders are really close.
Yeah, that is an interesting way of putting it. So we really don't have a guideline, right? Like you, if you want to play a game or a sport, you want to know what the rules are. Mm-hmm. Well, what are the rules? Can't double dribble, can't travel, you can't do this and that. But on the EPA stuff, it's almost like you can't do anything we don't like. And I'm like, well, what is it that you don't like? Yeah. And the problem, I think, lies is if they were to spell it out, it can get dissected. And then therein lies, negotiations, and why are the cruise lines allowed to just billow smoke, the airline industry, but then you're going to go after mom and pop shops that tune cars to go down the quarter mile. You're like, well, can you make sense of that, please? And they go, no, here's a fine, pay it, and if you don't want to pay it, we'll put you out of business and potentially in jail, or both.
I think that's their strategy, is start at the bottom, get those people, and also like an inside out, because they start at the OEM, work out, but then they also start at the bottom and work in. So like the big companies are still skating by safe, the giant companies are getting hit, and then the little companies are getting hit.
So in your opinion, what would be a giant company? Give me an example of what a giant company is.
A giant company to me is like a Holley Performance.
Have they gotten hit, as far as you know?
As far as I know, they have not.
Okay, right. And that's when I go, okay, and what small company, in your opinion, has gotten hit?
Lund.
Or PFI?
Yes.
Right.
PFI, Lund, and most recently Vargas, John Vargas and Mike Vargas.
Okay, I did not know that. Okay,
Yeah.
so what field are they, like what platform?
They build rotaries.
Oh, wow.
And they said, they're in Virginia, they build rotaries, and they said $5,000 fine every car that leaves their shop modified.
So, for example, a big company like Holley doesn't get hit, a small company like Lund and Vargas and PFI gets hit. Why?
And then the one above Holley, which is OEM, because
Ford,
everybody's
Dodge,
building
whatever.
around OEM.
Right. So then the problem, I think, lies is, in my opinion, is who's paying who. Is the EPA saying, are you too big to fine, too big to fail because you're a big company, so we'll leave you alone, because UAW, because whatever affiliations they might have, and it's easier to go after a smaller company like a Lund, like a Vargas, but in terms of optics, doesn't that look bad? Don't you think the EPA might look bad at going after little guys that are just trying to get by, as opposed to a major company?
Oh, of course, the GoPro.
It went down?
Well, we still have audio.
Okay.
But I don't think that, that's tough. I get that, going after Lund sucks for everybody who likes Lund, but
Right.
it doesn't for 99% of people. And that's why
It doesn't
go
affect
after
them. Like, it
them.
literally doesn't affect them.
Yeah.
So if people were to say, well, okay, let's say I have a mom and pop shop.
To record.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's say I have a mom and pop shop, and I'm not affected, and I hear PFI or Lund got hit. I don't care, because it's not affecting me. But think about it. Do some critical thinking. If they can go after a Lund or a PFI, they can go after you. And it doesn't matter if you put the off-road only use label, all that stuff is out the window. Like, literally out the window.
Yeah, I think people that hide behind an off-road use only thing is delusional.
Absolutely. They'll say, well, this is the funny thing. So the EPA will look the other way with big industry. Okay, that's fine. So has the EPA, in your opinion, what percentage of the automotive and racing, automotive period, are us, the racing, performance and racing industry?
Oh, I mean, we're the 0.0001%. We're the tax the rich.
Right, exactly.
We're that.
So what do you think the motivations are for the EPA to do that? Do you think it's to scare people to modify their car ever, period? And then, like you said, work their way up from the little guy to the big guy, and in the middle, you kind of like get rid of all of it?
Yeah, I think it's just so easy to go after a big conglomerate that, like, once you take out the OEM's ability to work in to the little guy, like, once GM is putting out cars that they're saying you can't tune, once Dodge is saying you can't touch this, that's when they really start to hurt the little guy, because not everybody wants to drive a 1999 Camaro that has a tune.
Right.
Even if you are still allowed to modify those, people want to drive
The new stuff.
the new Mustang like you just rolled up in.
Right.
People want that, and they want to be able to at least modify it a little bit, and it's hard to even explain.
All right, I would think like the people that go want to buy a brand new Mustang, for example, like the new 2024, basically it's a reskinned S550. So, okay, we're looking at it. What do I want to do to it? Well, I want to throw some headers in it. I want to do 80E85, and I want to, maybe put a Cobra Jet intake and blah, blah, blah. Well, you can't on 2024. 23 and under, you can. So does Ford look at that and go, we don't care? Or do they say, well, you have like sanctioned tunes that from us that are available? And I think that's what they're going after, because Dodge, with the electric stuff, they have their own little shop or something. And they're like, you got to go through us. And the way they put it is, well, at least you'll know you get it done right through Dodge. And I'm like, dude, so every hot rod shop, you're going to basically get rid of someone that you have
You're
a
telling
relationship.
them they're all wrong.
Yeah.
They're all doing it not up to Dodge's spec, which, if you ever owned a Dodge, up to Dodge's spec is
trash.
not exactly, it's not the cream of the crop here.
Right. Well, don't get, be careful. Some guys really love their Dodges, but I understand what
I
you're
hope they're
saying.
self-aware enough, though, to know.
They're not.
I own Chevys, and I can point out all the problems with it.
Right. Like, if you were to say to someone, a Hellcat is not that great of a car, you'll probably have a fight. Like, if they own that Hellcat or if they own that 392, I would go.
That GoPro's trash.
It's okay. I would go, okay, whatever. Like, I know Mustangs have their deficiencies, and I'm able to say how much the transmission sucks and this and this and that. So it is an interesting thing to kind of have Dodge say, we're going to corner the aftermarket performance modifications or performance modifications. And then you go, well, is that EPA approved? Like, is that cold air EPA approved? Is the catch can EPA approved? All that stuff. So yeah, like, I don't know what the end game is, because Ford, for example, 2024, they said you can't tune them. And the people that can, Whipple or potentially liver noise, can get like a carb EO tune. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what's a carb EO tune mean? It means, oh, it'll pass it's emissions requirement in California and other states. And I'm like, but what if I want to put ID 1700s and a twin turbo in this sucker?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you're effed.
And why does one state get to make the policy?
Don't get me started on that.
Because that's crazy in itself, is that everybody has to follow the strict standards that one state decided to put in, because for some reason, if you want to sell parts, they have to be 50 state legal.
Right. And then that state, because it's the highest, I guess, amount of cars, it's in that state, so it dictates everything else. But luckily, Florida, Texas say, screw you. But did you hear the alternative about the alternative to CARB? Is the SEMA certified program. I heard about it on the PFI Speed video, and my brain just started to go, wait, what? It's kind of a slippery slope if you want to get into it. I don't know if you have SEMA affiliations or anything.
I don't, and I actually have a lot of dislike for the RPM Act.
Okay.
And how it was written.
Excellent.
I think you would probably agree with me on that.
Yeah, we can go through that, but let me talk about the SEMA stuff quick, and then we'll get into RPM Act, because that is a very good point to bring up. So SEMA, the lawyer, was talking to the PFI, Brent, is that his name?
Yep.
And he's like, well, that's why we have SEMA certified, because you don't have to go through CARB. And I'm like, whoa. So now there's another sanctioning body that allows me to tune if I pay into their program and get approved by their overlords to work on my, oh, dude. And I was like, how much does that cost? And will you approve? Let's say, hey, SEMA, I want to put 1700s, twin turbos, and meth, a street E85, whatever in my car. You approve it? They go, hell no. That's crazy. That's a pollutant. And I'm like, why the F is this thing even a thing? So when I heard that, I went, nah, that sounds just like they're just trying to get them and PRI. I'm kind of like salty on them.
Yeah, they're a combined company for people that don't know, and they just built a beautiful facility.
Gorgeous
Congrats to
facility,
them.
right? Yeah. And they're like, hey, join the program. This big building needs to be
Yeah,
paid for.
they bought out a bunch of people that used to work for the big OEMs. They brought them in, and it's kind of now just a mix of talking. I'm sure they still have connections to OEM.
Right.
And it's all a big trio in a way.
In your opinion, do you think PRI and SEMA serve the best interest of the performance aftermarket?
Unfortunately, I don't think any private company really can serve the best interest when I don't believe they're a not-for-profit. Anytime that you have a for-profit interest, it's hard to serve the best interest of anyone.
Right.
But
you're based as hell, dude. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you because we didn't really talk about that extent of stuff before being on camera. And it is interesting because we see the buildings they're building, the programs they want you to buy into, the protection they infer. And then you get in there and you're like, I have no protection. Like, EPA will knock down my door, raid my, and they don't, whatever. Like, why am I a PRI member?
Well, the same thing happens with NHRA. You buy for your license.
Okay.
You pay every few years to have a license to go fast down the drag strip.
Right.
And the tests are like, oh, go down to the 60 foot, go down to the 8th mile after that, then go down. And I'm like, what? Like, who's the guy telling me that, like, I'm safe enough to go down the track in my car? Like, what?
It's like, did you get someone to sign this? Sure. Like, the testing was hilarious when I saw for John Lund Sr. He was like, yep, go down 60 foot, then 8th, then quarter. He did a quarter-mile rip, and they're like, hey, you're good.
It's mostly just like, okay, as long as you sign the check, like, that's the key.
Right, so as long as the dues are paid, they're happy, but what do they do? Are they going to put their full strength of their lawyers to really fight the EPA on stuff that's 100% an overreach? Like, in my opinion, it's a huge overreach to hit up Brent for selling Hondata when Hondata is still able to be manufactured. Like, wait, why don't you go after Hondata? Why don't you? Well, maybe they did, I don't know. But I'm like, he's a tiny shop, and he's got, and, it hurts me because he's got sons, and he's passionate. And I'm like, you're going to go after that guy and totally ignore, Carnival or ignore Royal Caribbean or anything like that.
Well, a guy like Brent, like, do you look at your sons and you're like you're going to go into the automotive world? Or are you looking at them like, you got to learn something else because this is a rocky road.
Learn to code, bro, or something. I know that's one of those hashtags, but like something, because even though this is your passion, I don't see it being a future for you to raise your kids off of.
Tuning is like, first off, it's gotten insanely more complex.
Oh.
And it's just not profitable. We were talking about this with somebody, like, nobody's going to develop the ability to unlock these cars because it's not going to be profitable or an easy to do thing. They're going to be knocking on your door in a few months of you doing it.
Tuning has gone backwards. So when I started tuning, it was 2015-ish. Lund Racing, hired me after seeing some of my videos, and I'm like,
it's an interesting resume.
I'm like, you know what I'm doing, right? He's like, you say car stuff, and that's a funny story, but it can take a while. But basically, I was saying such absolute horse crap, but it was true, and I didn't know it was true. Like, tuners steal tunes, and you just draw it off, add a degree, call it your tune, da-da-da-da-da. And they're like, how do you know this? And I'm like, I don't know this. I'm just talking crap because I'm bored. And they're like, well, you seem to know some stuff. And then we had some conversations. We ended up liking each other. I started tuning. So in 2015, you had the SET, you had HP tuners, you had a bunch of different tuning outfits, and you could just send a tune to somebody remotely in Alaska, they flash, your car runs great, send a data log, you're good to go. Now, unless you have an internet connection, you can't even data log. Oh no, you can data log, but now they say, well, you have a cell phone, and you can do everything through your cell phone. And I'm like, what if I don't have a cell signal at tracks? You know how awesome the signals are at tracks at a busy event.
You go to Bowling Green, and you're not actually talking to a human and out of the facility until you leave.
Right. And then I'm like, this isn't going to work. So I think the EPA has made everything worse. And these people, these manufacturers are trying to come up with ways of staying in business. And unfortunately, it hurts us because we're the end users and we have to jump through hoops. I guarantee one day we're gonna have to stick a device up our butt and then one in our ear to flash a car because, just because, you know, like authentication. And I'm like, I don't think I want this life.
Fingerprint on your computer.
That's the other thing. Now, are you a 2A guy? Are you a?
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. Well, so full disclosure of me, I am anti all government, basically.
I like it.
People are like, oh, you know, this guy on this side, this guy on that side. Whoever leaves me alone, because I think private business does better than all government.
100%.
And I think us as people can do better than government. That's kind of the small portion of it.
Gotcha. So I started to, because I'm not a gun guy, I'm not anti-gun, I'm just not so dialed in on the 2A stuff. So I started seeing parallels with applications. Well, this is illegal, this is illegal. Like theoretically in the gun world, there is a way of grabbing all parts that are legal to buy, but you can't put them together.
Yeah.
So in the tuning world, there's that too. There's parts that you can buy legally, don't you dare bolt it onto the car.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, so who makes that rule? And then you don't know where the you don't know where the goalpost is, you don't know where the rules are. So you're flying blind all the time and you're walking on eggshells. Like right now, if a customer tells me, hey, I got a check engine light for missing cats, I'm like, cool. Okay, you turn them off? No. And
Don't send this email again.
Right, and then he's like, and then I love the verbiage. It's like, it's 2023. You should know the EPA is watching everyone. He's like, I deleted my cats off my car. Can you? And I'm like, you EPA agent.
Yeah,
I see
that's
what
a tough one. I'm out here in California. I just deleted my cats. Can you help me?
I got state refed. What can you do? And I'm like, I guess that's a way of them going to a place to get checked out, like a post-car inspection. And if it fails because of missing cats or whatever, then you get your car taken away. And I'm like, I can't help you as a tuning company. And I couldn't help you ever because, like you said, the OEMs allow us access to their tuning, to their vehicles. So up until 2023, you can just plug in. People like HP tuners and SCT would index the tune. Oh, there it is. Some were better than others, and some indexed more than others, and some were able to see things that weren't indexed. And those are the good tuners. The better tuners have more access. That's basically it. Whoever has access is the best tuner. So that stops in 2024. So then we're like, okay, now what? I can't recommend a Ford vehicle or a new Dodge or a new anything because I, as a tuner, can't touch it. Yeah. So I tell people, theoretically, if you want to build an 8-second car now, you buy a 2020 and under Mustang. And they're like, but I want the new stuff. I'm like, talk to Ford about that.
Well, that's kind of what hurts me a little bit too, is I always see the car guys will find a way. And it's like, well, you're going up against a big company to hope that you find a way. You're just going to like let things happen to assume that down the road somebody will find a way so that you can put a turbo on your car. You think somebody cares that much? You think somebody that's smart enough to unlock these tunes and write code cares about a turbo on a car that much?
No, they're in NASA.
They're doing something better.
Exactly. They're working for Twitter. They're doing something. But maybe that guy has the passion behind it. Because you have met guys that are...
for him.
For him, right. But then you think he would go, I've cracked the code and now I'm selling this commercially.
Yeah.
No, they're going to go, wait, you hacked
Exactly.
encrypted software. You're going to jail.
Is it already a crime to hack encrypt? Because I know like Tesla was pushing that. They were like, break into our software, try to do it, and we'll give you money.
Right.
They did that when they first started because they were trying to find the flaws.
Gotcha.
But
okay, so this is where it becomes not slippery, but my end of things is not to crack code or crack the software. My end of things is to have commercially available software and manipulate that. So the people who are the commercial companies, I'm not going to name names, they're tasked to get a computer and decompile the binary or the C file, the A, whatever. So, okay, if they can do it, but we can't adjust what they did, well, we can't tune, but it's indexed and available. It's like saying, here's a carrot, don't bite it, even though you're hungry, don't bite it, but we got you a carrot. And if you dare bite it, you're the idiot.
Well, because once even CAN bus became popular, that really slowed people down.
Big time.
Because CAN bus is such a difficult thing to encrypt, and the whole car running off of CAN bus through one thing. And now the new cars have so much technology that if you just like, okay, go buy a Fuel Tech standalone. Guess what's not going to work?
Everything.
Everything
Your
else.
windows, your cruise control, gone. And that's what people would
The
say.
rear diffs are electric now.
Yes.
Like, you're going to have real
Your
problems.
brakes, don't Corvettes have like brake-by-wire, the C8s?
I think so.
So imagine you buy a C8 Corvette and you're like, I'm just going to shove Holly in it. Okay, cool. Then nothing works.
Yeah.
None of your traction settings, your wipers, nothing. But the thing goes in 870.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I just gave up a whole car for an ET. And that's where you go.
Now I have to put a cage in it and,
Yeah.
and ruin it.
So that's what I tell people. I'm like, okay, yes, you can tune it, but can you? We are adults. We don't want to sit. Okay, you don't drive this every day, right?
No.
Would you want to drive this every day?
No.
Right. This is a race car, and you want to, and maybe once in a while, drive it to get ice cream. But I want a car that's refined and hauls ass. And it's almost to the point where you're like, do I buy a Plaid, or do
Yeah.
I get a V3 and hook it up the way I want?
I call bullshit on all my friends that are always like, I drive my race car all the time. I'm
No.
like, I call bullshit on them all the time. I'm like, you either don't enjoy it and are pretending you enjoy it, or you're just a psycho.
There is no way you drive a car that has a cage like that where if you hit a pothole, you smash your head on the roll cage. I have a Fox body. It's a cool car for a block. It's cool. And then it sucks after that. And then
Yep.
you get in like that white car was a pleasure to drive here. It makes good power. I'm like, I am happy. So imagine you want to do that to say a Corvette guy. Camaros are done, but let's say you're a Corvette guy or anything modern muscle car related. You can't do anything with. You have to be stuck and happy with what the OEM gives you.
Yeah.
And that's all because of the EPA. It doesn't let people like me manipulate the software that, like, if it's indexed, I should be able to manipulate it. If it's not indexable, I understand.
We're almost being pushed back into a stance car era, because what you can do here is you can do a dress-up kit for your engine.
Yes.
You could do wheels and tires, and you can get like a red brake caliper. Those are how you buy your new car and then set yourself apart.
And I think that's what the aftermarket companies are doing. Like, you're starting to see a lot of people just get dress-up kits, wheels. They go heavy on the body stuff, and American Muscle, which is a Ford parts house. They did, I think, something really smart. They merged with a company that does old school stuff. And they're like, well, you've known us for the modern stuff. Now buy a Chevelle Krager SS's.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I guess I want that. You want some radial TAs? I'm like, yeah, I want that. So I think old is going to be new, or old is going to be desirable again if the new stuff can't get tuned at all. Because who wants a cold air? Actually, that's the other thing. I think the new Mustang, the fact that it has two cold airs, is similar to what a DPF is on a modern diesel. That if you were to manipulate them at all, and it has an extra sensor in there, it goes, no, not working. And I think modern cars will become undrivable because you've changed the tune, the calibration, or a hard part like a diesel is.
Yeah.
So we have a theory in Lund Racing that are like, that's a nice anti-tampering device.
Well, it's very easy for the people that design this software to put back doors that won't be noticed right away, but the second you change anything, the ECU will pick up on it. The ECUs are so smart now. You're not just dealing with like, 2 tables of changing your air fuel like
Spark, air
freaking
fuel.
10 years ago. They're so smart that they know every sensor. They test every sensor when you turn them on these new cars.
Well, have you heard that the new OEMs are doing a thing? They have over-the-air updates, and it will literally revert itself back to stock if it senses a change in the calibration ID.
Yeah, I've already heard people like, oh, I'll just put it in a Faraday box in my garage, like, a lead box, so that it doesn't get anything out.
ECU or like
The whole car. You just drive into a lead container
but
at
when
your
you
house.
drive it, it's communicating
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, I don't know what the end-all, be-all fix is. I think, I'm going to be honest with you, I think, and I hate to say it, I'm a proponent of the electric car stuff, but not the mandate. Never.
Yeah.
I love the technology. I love getting 300 miles of charge if I was to get that, but don't make me get it. Give it to me as an option. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be the norm until they start going, crap, technology hasn't caught up to the demand of the lithium, the cobalt, the nickel, all that
Yep.
stuff, unless you do like a salt-based solid state battery or something like that. So
If you go to buy a car and the government has to pick up part of the bill because it's too expensive to make, it's a bad product.
it's a bad product.
I can go start making T-shirts, and if I make them for $100, the government's not going to pick up the other $80 so
Right.
that the consumer gets it for a good deal. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to be like, that's a bad product if he can't make it for cheap enough for every day.
So you're saying if you have to be coerced into buying it, it is not good for you.
Yes, if somebody needs to really convince me by also paying for most of it, it's the same with solar panels. If I wanted to put them on my house, they're like, oh, you're going to get paid $10,000 into a $15,000 set of solar panels. I'm like, well, they must not work that good then.
And I love how the people go, well, my last week's electric bill was $2. And I'm like, like I paid for that. You're welcome, by the way,
Yeah.
taxpayer. No problem. And I don't think they see that. They just see how it affects them directly.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, because if I don't, out of sight, out of mind. And unfortunately, a lot of shops are like that with the EPA stuff. It's not happening to me, so
Yeah.
they must have done something wrong. And we're like, no, we don't even know what we got popped for. I had no idea.
But the other thing is, like, that shop that just watched his buddy up the street get popped for EPA violations, you can go ask the person that's in the fight, like, hey, what do I do to help? And they'll probably tell you, I don't know.
No.
Even the person that's leading the charge, like, I don't know.
Right.
Because there is a whole mystery of that. Like, what do you do?
It's almost like, and this is the funny thing is, so let's say I get popped by the EPA, right? Whatever tuning. And then I tell them, who do I need to go through to be able to do my job with your blessing?
Mm-hmm.
And they would say, oh, SEMA certified.
Yeah.
And I go, how about not? How about
Is there another option?
well, what about CARB? And I'm like, no, because SEMA does the testing for CARB, and then all of a sudden SEMA did their own thing, and then what about PRI? And then you're like, I have no one. So in the 2A stuff, who is your person, your main advocate to fight, or says they are, and then is there anyone that's actually suing people and winning to keep that right going?
No, I mean, it definitely seems like the dominoes have been falling more than kind of being picked back up in every aspect of things, because there are more outspoken people on it's dangerous side of things.
Right. And the other problem I have with the EPA fight is, so the people that aren't aware that's happening, I hate that they, maybe inadvertently, are shoving it in everyone's face that we're doing this. And I understand they're going to do what they're going to do, but sometimes this is serious. Like, the EPA is literally putting people in jail, putting them out of business, fining them to death, or making themselves get lawyered up. Because you saw the video, Brent said the lawyer's fees are much more than the fine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, so then there's people, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm accusing anyone of doing anything, but if you're driving around, and showing it in people's face, and you have a big platform, like drag and drive events. I love drag and drive events.
Yeah.
I think they're awesome, and I think they should always exist. But damn it, all the EPA has to do is turn on the freaking YouTube channel and go, oh, you're driving through towns with 2,000 horsepower cars, and I hate it, because I used to watch Drag Week all the time, and now it's taken away from the fun, because I'm like,
It's so tough. It's such a tough scenario, because it's like, do you, close your shop door and hide from the EPA, or do you go out there and live your life
Right.
and, hope that, because part of me thinks an accelerant is almost good for things.
Like,
if you keep kicking the can down the road, you're just kind of like making the
Delaying.
yeah.
Right.
I almost think just fuel the fire, let it happen,
right.
and
See where the cars fall.
let the cards fall, let it all fall.
I agree with that.
Just throw the bucket of
throw the can in a
yeah,
fire and go, boom,
exactly.
there's the fire. Now what are we going to do about it?
Exactly. Just let it all accelerate as quickly as it can, instead of let things just get chipped away at.
I'm down for that, but then what? Like I'm down for just not kicking the can, but putting fuel on the fire. But then
All
what?
the cards out on the table.
So then you'll see who's about what. Like you'll be like, all right, who's down for this? Like we're because you can try to defend or educate as much as you can till your face is blue, but no one will understand it unless it hits them on a personal level.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, well, everyone got hit. everyone's guilty. What are we gonna do about it?
And then, so once they hit the big guy on the personal level, and then they've already hit all the little guys, then the big guy's like, hey guys, I need help now.
Oh, where were you?
Exactly. That's my other worry. I'm like, okay, so like all these people fall, and then there's a couple big companies and people left, and then they ask for help once it's in their back door, because
What would Cooper do if you were the little guy that got hit and two big guys are still existing,
doing the same thing that you just got in trouble for,
and now facing extinction? Cooper does what?
Yeah, I just paid all these fines. My car's gone.
Right.
You know,
Your life is over.
The government
You're now,
kicked my dog.
You're working for the DP. You're working for the DPW. You're nothing against that, but I'm just saying you're not doing what your passion is. What do you do when those people ask for help?
That's the tough part, because you've inadvertently potentially burned a bridge.
Right.
Without doing anything. Silence kind of burns the bridge.
Silence is violence.
Yeah. I mean, kind of. Yeah. You can definitely burn the bridge by not speaking up.
So you just give them the double birds and go, hey, bro,
Like,
I'm done. So now you face those.
Yeah,
issues.
exactly. Like, what are you going to help save other people's house while yours just burned down?
That is interesting. While your house is burning, would you help someone else's?
Yeah.
In the beginning of the stages of the fire.
Yeah. What is the put your mask on before you help others? The airline.
Oh, yeah,
the
exactly.
Airline
It's
one.
like, get up, put your mask on.
Put
and
your
it's
mask
like,
on
okay.
first and then help others. No, the breathing masks.
Oh,
you got to
oh.
put your breathing mask on before you
I
help
found that
others.
I found that one to be funny. So like when you're on an airplane, they say, make sure you have oxygen before you, I'm like,
Exactly.
oh no, wait, what if you have
Then you help your
What if you
kids.
have a baby? Right, exactly.
Then you help your baby.
Well, I want to live first in the baby.
Exactly.
Like, oh shit, they told me to put it on
Yeah,
first.
it's the similar things of like, you gotta, if you couldn't help yourself and nobody else helped you, I mean, you look at people like, what is it, the guy that, Killdozer. Killdozer's a great
He's
example.
My hero. That guy is my hero. I literally, I celebrate Killdozer Day.
Yep.
I wear his shirts. Niemeyer,
An honest man who was pushed to his breaking point.
he just wanted to weld some mufflers in his little shop. And then
Yeah.
these guys are like, no, you got to put sewer. And then he just said, all right, I'm going to buy a D355, I think it was, or something like that.
Yeah.
He just bulldozed the whole town. And I'm like, a man and a welder.
And he didn't want to actually hurt anyone either. He just wanted to ruin businesses.
Right. He's like, I'm going to, the
Eye
dough
for-
chefs.
it
and
was
the
an eye
city-
for an eye.
Right. And it was, and you know what? And everyone that's a blue collar guy or was ever slighted by government understood that guy's cause. And we look at it as, you know, it's almost like that's what it takes. But then, you know, you're some kind of, they label you something, and then you're just like a nuisance. But people want to label that guy crazy. Anyone can get driven to that point that is reasonable. And
Yeah.
he seemed like a reasonable guy.
That's what everybody said about him. They were like, he was the most reasonable, helpful guy, honest, nice guy. And then they ruined his business. They wouldn't help him. And he went and mowed down half the town.
So I wonder, I hope it never gets to that, because I've always talked about that with the Lunds and other people. I'm like, do we need a martyr? And I'm not saying someone physically get hurt. I'm just saying someone that is, because, okay, I don't know anyone that, okay, I do, I'm sorry, I do know someone that was absolutely put out of business, ruined, but he gets back on his feet quick because he's very smart and he's
Yeah.
able to live. But I don't know anybody that was absolutely decimated. We know Corey is fighting the fight with the diesel stuff, but he has the ability to fight the fight. Other people don't.
Yeah, and he's a good example of a smart guy. He has other businesses, other avenues for making money. And
Right.
But some people that like, I just know cars. I just wrench on cars.
That's it.
Like, this is all I know. You
Imagine
know?
you're a mom and pop shop, and let's say you install exhausts, and let's say they're all legal. You have high flow cats, you have every approved part on the planet. Well, according to the EPA, you can't tune on that car to communicate with those parts. Oh, well, so now we're done. Every mom and pop shop that modifies the car in any little way and wants to tune it, they're done. Mm-hmm. Potentially.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind that even happens anymore.
That some entity above you could step in and tell you what you're doing is fundamentally wrong for, I was going to say the environment. We haven't even touched on that whole side of things yet, because that really makes me seem like a crazy person, unfortunately, once I...
The more, and I love going into it, but I'm not too red-pilled on it. I just know that based on, depending on who is funding your research, your data can be skewed. So all you have to do is look at who is funding what and is putting out what data, and you go, oh,
Yeah.
then screw you. I don't care what you say.
Well, like the first thing you learn in like a statistics class is like you can manipulate statistics to fit your narrative.
Right.
You really can. Like I heard a great example, like, terrorist attacks in the US have been a huge low, and then you look at 2001 to 2023.
Right.
Only, 50 people died.
Right.
And you're like, well, what happened
Right before that.
Right,
yeah. Right. And then not just that, yeah, we can go on the gun violence,
Yeah.
it's people violence. It's not gun violence.
Yeah, when they're like, oh, kids, and they're like, well, kids are ages 1 to 19. That's not a kid anymore.
Right, that's a grown ass man.
Yeah,
So-
that's an adult.
Yeah, exactly. So it is funny that the data that they put out there, and that's what they rely on to enforce. For example, the U.S. could stop producing emissions now. China's not going to stop. India's not going to stop. Russia, Malaysia, all these emerging, developing countries are not going to starve. They're like, oh, well, you got to eat bugs and like fake tomatoes and then synthetic meat, and they're like, no, we're going to eat cows. We're gonna get coal, burn it, get up to a certain point, like where we are now, where we're now all of a sudden going, yeah, we're emitting too much. I'm like, no. But we could stop it, and we're not going to affect the earth in a huge amount. But some people might argue that they go, oh yeah, we're like we would affect it like 30%, and then you hear on Twitter or something that global cooling is now happening again. And I go, when I was a kid in grade school, like 19, I'm old. So like when I was in 6th grade, I remember the next ice age. I was like, oh my Dad, did you know that we're going to stop
That's crazy.
cooking, man? Next ice age. And then all of a sudden, global warming. And I was like, okay. And then back to global cooling. And I'm 45 years old. So I've seen 3 trends reverse on themselves just in that span.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of scare tactics. And funny enough, I grew up on Long Island, and it was built by an iceberg in the Ice Age. The whole thing was like, oh, it pushed all this dirt here and made this island. I was like, oh, cool, Ice Ages are great. Like, this is the island I live on.
Are you hardcore into conspiracy theories?
I mean, I enjoy them all. I don't commit to anything.
Right.
Any one idea I won't commit to, but I do enjoy them.
When you brought up icebergs and ice ages, and so did I. The fact that, like, I don't know, either 18,000 or 180, I forget, there's a 1/8 in there. There was like a rapid heating of the planet, and we were in the middle of an ice age. And the rapid heating of a planet, they suspect might have been caused by a comet, or
a solar blip.
And then it took out like a very highly advanced civilization that we were.
Yeah.
So I kind of said, well, let's say we stop all this emitting stuff. We're all driving electric cars. We all have like microchips in our head. 3 volcanoes erupt. The solar flare decides the sun decides to fart one day, and we're gone. So I'm just like, why are we doing all this? And then money is always involved. If you pay a fine, you can operate. Oh, so Earth goes, oh no, he's good. He paid a fine.
Yeah. Well, even like everybody's always like, well, China's emitting and India, and it's like, okay, so like you're gonna punish them for being 30 years behind us? Like that was us 30 years ago,
right?
Doing the same thing, and now they're the hey, speed up.
Right, and that's, as a tuner, you can't have logic. Like you cannot have logic. You have to just put yourself in front of a computer and just smash tunes, because the moment you start thinking about that, it gets in your head. It affects your work, and you can get salty that this guy didn't get hit, but we did, or this guy or that guy. But at the end of the day, you just, in my opinion, just got to worry about yourself. But like you said, I think there has to be one major event for everyone to come together on this.
Yeah.
But even then, it'll, I think, be like chippy as hell.
Because there's been major events in other instances, in other like 2A stuff, that hasn't really triggered anything but negative.
Right.
Even if it's what you think is supposed to be helpful, like, somebody breaks into a place and stop by a Good Samaritan, like, you think those are the things that'll help, but they just disappear.
Yeah, and I don't know, because I'm not privy to all that. I know there's lobbies and entities that say they're defending you, but there's money involved, and it just gets super ridiculous. And sometimes I just want to go racing. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I just want to go racing and be left alone. But even that's become like, even going to the track, like the physical activity of going to the track And trying to race to forget about things has become problematic because of everything that's happening. Like when you get in this car, are you happy and you forget about
I don't
everything?
think about the EPA.
You don't think about the EPA?
No, they're
You're in
not
the middle
on
of a
my mind.
burnout, bam, bam, and like, yeah, it's all good.
When I get on that button, I'm not thinking about, whoever I'm voting for this season.
How did this come about? I know that, I know you and Garrett used to, collaborate and stuff like that, but I don't remember the why 2J and why in a Camaro.
So I built the Camaro with an LS, and it went like a 960, and it had like a stock bottom end LS in it, and it was just like junk. It sounded terrible. It was an LS.
Right. Whoa. Careful.
It was an LS, and I was like, okay, so like a fully built LS is going to cost me X amount of dollars. Yeah.
$400
For a fully built one.
A fully built junkyard LS goes 7 for $400.
And then I have a really close relationship with Victor at Induction Performance.
Okay.
And I already owned a 2J. I already had a built 2J that was sitting there with
didn't
like
know
a
that.
60 millimeter turbo. I was going to build another car. And then I had this car that was like 9-inch cage and all this good stuff. And I was like, why spend all the money on a built LS when I already have a built 2J? So we put that in. It was built for like 1,000 horsepower, 900 horsepower.
Okay.
Put an 83 millimeter turbo on it and made 1,500 and ran that for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Without opening it.
Wow.
2 years. So it just kind of worked out, and it just was a good relationship with me in Induction. And I get to make fun of the Supra owners for buying an $80,000 car and then ruining it with $1,000 car and ruined it.
You're right. It is funny because the thing just seems to work, and it sounds gnarly. And you're like, what the hell's going on in there? Then you figure it out, and you're like, oh, okay. Like you respect that. Do you get crap from 2J guys because you stuffed it in a catfish?
No, not at all.
Really?
Because most of the 2J guys are either in a Supra or like a 240 anyways.
Okay.
And then there's like a whole gang of Mustang 2J guys.
I've started to see that, especially at 2K, Texas 2K, where I saw some notches with 2Js and they're moving. And
There's
I'm like,
a local group that has like 5 of them, and they're all like identical. They're like a South Florida group of guys, and they're all identical cars basically. And they're like, oh, we just take parts off each other, and like we can, make sure one car makes it to the finals.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's a pretty cool deal because they get to they run with the Treadstone,
yeah, I'm not.
TRE, they make the intercoolers, I guess.
Oh, okay. It
Down
might be Treadstone.
somewhere, yeah. But they are local with a bunch of 2J guys, and I actually race with most Mustang guys, ironically.
Yeah, the Murillo and all those guys. Like a great example, like I always Corey Grayley. Every time, you know him, the red car.
Oh yeah, Corey's a good dude.
Great guy. Every single time someone tells me or they ask me on the chats or whatever, what car would you build? I said Corey Grayley's car. And they're like, why? I'm like stock bottom end with studs, turbos, 8s. And if you want to go quicker, you get a notch, you get a Fox. You don't do it in an S550 unless you really hate money. Like if you really hate money, build an S550 to go 7s, and you'll do it once, but then every other pass will be an 8.0, 8.1. Then you turn it up and you blow everything up. And then when you really start to make power, it loves to do dumb wheelies and it breaks everything on the way down. So Corey Grayley is one of those great examples that you go, if you want to build a car that just goes A to B and it's minimal stuff for an S550. Do that. Anything above and beyond that, get this or get a notch or get a Fox, because
even the S195s or S187s.
Yeah, S197s.
S197s are a good chassis. They're just heavy.
It's the modern Fox body.
Yeah.
That's what we tell people, because they're what you put in, it says, okay, like it's a dumb car, like, hey, here's 5% on the math. And he goes, thanks for that 5%. Where you do a 5% on a S550, he goes, well, it's 8. And you're like, oh, okay, so the Gen 1s are just vetted as hell. Most of those guys you run with have stock computers, and that's where we shine. Cars that go 40s, 30s, and 20s, stock computer stuff, and you're like, okay, but we haven't really messed with standalone stuff because we haven't really had a need, and it's because of the Ford stuff is that powerful. Gen 2 and up. Gen 1.
When Lund can go 690s on a stock computer
ECU,
car, is a little eye-opening because there ain't no Chevy computer that you're trusting to do that.
and that's the thing. And we're in the OEM computer side of things. So I was blown away that people were surprised that the Coyotes can make that much power with a stock computer data. And I thought it was common knowledge, but it wasn't. And I understand because you live in a bubble sometimes. But once you can, like Corey's car is a stock computer car that runs eights and makes probably 11 or 1200. And he's a big guy. He's not a little guy.
Yeah.
And you go, well, there it is. And then when Lund goes, well, we're just going to like go all the way with it. And I'm like, oh, you guys really hate money. And they're like, yeah, we hate money. But when you see a car go 200 miles an hour, 690s on a stock computer, and IRS, you go, I mean, they're doing something right. And it's a good little platform to work off of.
Well, there's a lot of S550 race cars out there too now.
Yeah.
A lot of like chassis car S550s. I don't know why, maybe the long wheelbase. They
Long
became
wheelbase,
a really good.
it's a great looking car. Aerodynamics play a big part. And for some reason, I think it all depends on the aftermarket. Like, what generation is this called? I'm sorry.
That's a fourth.
Okay, so fourth gen. Did the aftermarket really get after it with these cars in terms of suspension, 9-inch conversions, stuff like that?
Well, you also got to remember, from fourth gen to fifth gen in Camaros was like 10 years.
You're right. Right.
There was 10-year gap between cars, so it was like you kind of were sitting on your hands.
Did
in a
it
way.
all, right.
You didn't really have the ability to just get into the next generation Camaro right away.
Okay.
Like it was like 2000 to 2008 or something.
That they didn't
with
build
no
the Camaro.
cars.
Right. Yeah, so I think the aftermarket saw the potential in this S550, and they're like it started with axles and drive shaft, and then you're like, a stock rear end car with axles and drive shaft runs 7s, and they're like, yeah. And then everyone's like, well, let's just do that because we can do more with less. And I think a lot of people, I'll be honest with you, they like to show off a little because it's a nice car. It's pretty. The problem with me and the S550 15 and up Mustang is it's been co-opted by the stance, Starlight headliner, terrible. The culture around that vehicle has changed. Now you're more like a race car. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But I think you're more on the race end of things where I am more on the street end of things. And I'm telling you, I understand why Mustang owners get made fun of. I'm like, I totally get it. Because I do it too.
You look at the Formula Drift side of things, and guess who the cool guys in FD are driving? Guess what they're driving?
Right, exactly. So, you kind of go, have you ever owned a platform and the culture just eroded to crap and you're like, I'm getting rid of this? Because then you're lumped in with that type.
I've never been in that situation. I mean, it may happen I have a CTSV, it may happen to that community, but...
You have a 2? CTSV
Yeah, it's a V2.
Right.
It may happen to that community because they're starting to get cheaper, and that's kind of what happens when cars get cheaper, is like, they get easily attainable, then suddenly they're out there sliding in a intersection at midnight, and then all of a sudden people are getting hit by them, and
you're like, so yeah, you haven't been in that situation. The problem with me, I've got like S197s, like the ones you race with, those have always been racy and they've never become ricey. S550s were ricey right off the bat. One, EcoBoost. They introduced a 4-cylinder turbo, and the guys that came over from the, not to blame import guys 100%, but I kind of am, they got the EcoBoost. And then once they graduated to the GT, they brought that mindset and they stanced it and they did it, and they didn't want to go fast. And then for some reason now you're seeing people go a completely weird route where they gut the car, brand new car, 2023, gutted, no dash, no nothing. They'll put rear VMSs, a Cobra Jet, E85, and do roll races.
just to go try to run like 10s.
Well, not just that, they want to do a roll. The whole thing is 60 to 130, and I have a sneaking suspicion that the draggy has not ruined, but it took the track. Like, people don't want to go to the track because they do draggy stuff. And I understand it, but I'm like...
Yeah, there's draggy racing. I mean, I think during the pandemic...
That's all you could do.
There was people that were legitimately draggy racing.
Like on a
their
board?
friends in different states. Like, draggy is great. It has helped a lot. Like, it is a great tool. But definitely, like, every great thing can be used by the people that probably don't use it correctly.
Right, and unfortunately, that's what a lot of the modern racing community does, and it's just fine. It's just not my thing. And I think maybe I'm getting old, right? Maybe you go, I used to just drag race with my friends and come back to the spot and just have a good time. Where now it's like, people try to make you jump. People try to screw with you. People talk crap on you online. And then you're like, I don't want to go to the meet. I can't just go to the meet and be happy and race my buddies. It's always like some kind of weird issue, and it's the culture thing that's kind of eroded in my opinion.
I never really street raced because it just I didn't really care for roll racing. They didn't really do any dig racing, street racing around Florida. I feel
Right.
like it's a very niche thing. It's like a Midwest thing.
Yeah.
People don't realize like it's like a North Carolina, Midwest thing. Like we don't have like street
Dig spots.
racing like
Yeah,
that.
there's no dig spots here. And if there
No.
are, I don't know about them. I mean, I have no idea. There's like
I've never been invited, and I got a car. Like,
right. And
you would think.
And yeah, exactly. And I've seen some people, and then you're a known guy, so they'd be like, "Hey, Coop, come on down and do like a cash days." And then like,
Yeah.
where? Tampa. No.
No, it's not happening. Exactly. Like I used to live by Gandy in Tampa, which is it's the bridge, and that's where everybody used to street race. They would roll race there because as long as you weren't speeding by the time you were off the other side of the bridge,
They were good.
because you can't really clock a speed on the bridge.
Oh, you're right. Okay. They don't have anything in between. Like, does it have any kind of like? It's not a toll bridge, is it?
Not when I was there.
Okay.
You know, it was like as long as you were going 50 by the other end,
They don't care.
you were safe. I'm sure it's different now, like everything, but
And when I lived in Texas for a little bit, I lived in Houston from like 14 to 15. From Wednesday to Sunday, you could find a dig race at a spot somewhere.
Yeah,
And you just go on Instagram and they DM you a spot and you just sit there and watch. Not like quick, badass cars, guys you don't even know, guys that work off an oil rig for 6 months and
Yeah.
they take that check and put it in the notch and then they just run. I'm like, man, wow, what a world, But here in Florida, it's totally different. You need to have like a 2,000 horsepower GTR to be like, King Daddy.
and I recently got somewhat excited about seeing what Street Outlaws was doing,
Yep.
where
Where's the somewhat come into play?
I mean, it's TV, so season 2 we'll see what happens.
Okay.
You know,
I haven't watched season 1 because I'm purposely kind of like,
I just know people on it, I guess. That's the only reason I
it.
personally get excited about it, because I know people that are.
do they get invited? Do they call them up and say, hey man, you're badass, you're known, come by?
I never told anybody, but I got a call.
Oh.
And I never.
Is it because of the amount of effort, work, time, money to
I didn't have an engine
Participate?
at the time, and I was waiting on parts, and there was just not enough time to get my engine back in and then change the car.
right?
Realistically,
You have to like put a bunch of weight in the back.
yeah, like
fly.
I'm a radial tire racer
Right.
on a track that you lose your shoes on.
Yeah.
I'm not used to. I'm not used to going down like a terrible road.
Unprepped. Yeah, exactly.
But then some of the local Mustang guys went out there and raced.
And did they? I mean, you can't say what they,
Yeah,
they did. Well
it was
or not.
Moretti that went out there
Okay,
with his car.
gotcha.
And I don't know how.
And it was still single turbo? Because
Yeah.
now it's twin, right? Okay. Yeah, so they get invites and they get called and they go race and then, you watch them. But the problem is with me watching that show is like, I don't like anything that's scripted. Like, that's why I like
Yeah.
your podcast stuff. When I saw what you were doing, I'm like, I'd love to be on because it's like, he's like a bro. He's just normal.
completely unscripted, yeah.
Right. And then so when you see like, anything that might look a little scripted, it's just a bit of a turnoff, and you're like, okay, but look, I hope the show does well, but it's just, I want real stuff.
Yeah, the first episode really kind of lost me a little bit because it was all the original guys, but they all went out there and like this like, oh, I don't care what happens if I spin or lose and like go home first round. I was like, they had like no
Didn't
desire
care?
to win. I was like, you gotta at least like portray to the audience that you're trying to like bury the guy next to you, like at least.
I
Like,
think that's why when they were list racing on their first couple of seasons, it was so popular because
Yeah.
the cars looked like a normal car-ish, and you're like, wow, these guys are fast, holy crap, and they care and they fight, and like, all right, cool. But yeah, I guess it kind of lost its allure when they literally had pro mod looking bodies, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't.
and now
I
No
can't
Prep
relate.
King is huge. No
Massive.
Prep Kings.
Have you been to one?
I haven't. They had one at Bradenton, but apparently the line to get in was so insane,
Man.
which is awesome.
It
I love
is.
hearing that. If they could bring money in,
Yeah, that's the thing. If they can bring money in, and but like,
they're in Australia right now.
yeah, I saw them putting cars in containers, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so I can't relate to that, right? So it's unrelatable. So I have to like do the low end street stuff. Not that I'm a big time street racer, but I like to mess around once in a while. So when you go to a track, I don't know. I guess the whole like we were talking about EPA and how the culture around everything. And let's be honest, is there any money in racing at our level, right? It's only a net loss, like all the time. And maybe if you win, you get your gas covered and your entry fee, and you're like, eventually, I got to that point where I said, why am I doing this? Like, why am I? And I don't mean to like bum out the audience because every time I talk like this, people are like, oh man, you're right. I go, okay, so I build a $75,000 to $100,000 car by the time it's all said and done. Then I enter a race, and then I get beat by a car that has 300,000 into it. And then you go, I have no shot. So, okay, you hope there's a B division, C division, and the payout isn't as good.
Yeah.
So then you try to enter where you can, and then eventually you just go, I wonder if it's just a money thing, because I can't compete at that level. So what do you do? You test and tune? What do you do? So you just kind of, I'm not making any money, and you're stressing out your family life, your personal life. You're just bummed out, because when you win, you want to race more, or at least when you're competitive. When TX2K first started, or let's say 3 or 4 versions in, 16, 17, 18.
Yep.
I was in the B class at 940. And then I was supposed to race you in round 2, but I think you broke in one, like maybe 2 years ago. I had my blue GT500.
Yeah.
And it was like an 8.1 car, 8.3 car. We were in the B class, a full second and a half slower. And now the B class is a 760 and under class. And I went, I just, what am I doing?
Yeah, because it's tough, because in the B class, you're hoping for more rules, but then again, you don't want more rules, because then it becomes class racing, which is like X275, Ultra Street, those kind of things where you have to spend $5,000 for, you know, 1/100th of a second off your time slip.
Exactly.
Every dollar, it gets more expensive as the rules get more and stuff, and it gets less fun. So and you're pushing your car to the limit every single pass.
time.
I don't want to push my car to its maximum
Like,
limit
you can't
every
blow
single
this up.
pass.
Can you afford to blow this car up 3 times a year?
No,
Right.
not at all.
Right. Once a year, you're like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
So these guys can afford, or maybe are willing to, blow it up every pass.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just can't do that.
No, I'm not interested in blowing it up. I'd rather put it back on the trailer and go home with it running.
Right, but and that's like, I understand if you have a business. Like if you're a YouTuber, which I don't know any YouTuber that races only and makes a lot of money. No, they usually couple it with something else. If you're a YouTuber or an engine builder or a chassis guy, I understand you racing to show what you can do, and you make money off the customers when they come to you. But if you're just a guy that works as a welder or construction or whatever, and you have a passion for racing, it's very difficult to stay in it when these cars are so fast and you're in there. You almost want to build a bracket 1050 car and have a bunch of fun.
Just go index racing it.
Yeah, but then you're like, oh, it's index racing.
Yeah, exactly. And in our mental capacity as car guys, we need to progress in some
Always,
way.
right.
And if you put a ceiling on yourself, you're kind of gonna stifle all of your desire to push.
Like, I'm sure there was a point with this car that you went 8.1, 8.0, 8.1, 8.0, and you're like, when am I going to get that 7-second pass? And then when it happened, you were like ecstatic. I could go home, whatever. And then the next time you went out and went 8.0, you're like, what's wrong with this car?
Exactly. And now, like, I have a pretty good butt dyno on it. When it's like at 300 feet, I kind of know what the pass is going to do.
This is 770. Yep,
and then I'll just
770.
get out of it, because I'm like,
why rag it out?
what else is happening past 600 feet that I'm going to be excited about?
But then, right, let's say...
Stopping?
Right.
Am I looking forward to
The
stopping?
parachute. So let's say, based on that, let's say you're winning a race at TX2K or FL2K. Bam, you're out, and you're like, I'm not going to rag my stuff out. Let off. And then you come back and, what are you sandbagging, man? What, are you trying to get in the B class or in the A class? What's wrong with you?
Well, it happened to me at FL2K.
Oh.
So, this was a really bad one. I'll throw myself under the bus for this. So
Okay.
I was out on this 240, and I dumped the chute at like 800 feet. They thought I broke and I dumped the chute on accident.
Damn.
He started to come back on me, so I was back on the gas. So like another 200 feet, I got back
You
on it.
literally disrespected this man for like 400 feet.
I didn't even mean to. I just didn't want to break out, and I was within like a 100th of a second of breaking out.
Wow.
And I didn't want to do that, but I was worried he was going to come back around me with my shootout.
So what happened after? Did he come like, what the hell are you doing?
No, he didn't say
Oh,
anything.
okay. Because I would think you're like ridiculously disrespecting the dude.
Well, I nailed him on the tree, so like it was his own fault. He lost his own race basically at that point. Like you can't really get on me when your tree was like,
won something.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So maybe if it was closer, he might have said something, but I don't know. I
Oh,
just
that's
kind of.
great. Because typically when the chute kind of fails, it's like early on, not mid-run. And then you pull it and then you accelerate. And like, oh, the disrespect. Oh my God, son.
And I have nitrous on the car, so it lights the turbo instantly.
Right.
Like it's 100% throttle switch, so it's like
Okay.
right back onto it, and then
It's what, like a 75 shot, 150?
yeah, it's like a 70 shot,
Okay.
nothing big,
Oh, just to light the turbo
just
up.
to kind of imitate cubic inch, basically.
Gotcha. So basically, when you got on it, it was very apparent that you
Yeah.
got right back on it.
Oh yeah, it was. You could hear it.
And that therein lies the other problem with those kind of A, B, C, D classes, where you and I both know there have been guys that run a 720, and they're out there at 8.0, and then they give you what, like a 3/10 window, and then it becomes bracket racing.
Yeah.
It literally becomes bracket racing. And again, I'm not faulting them for that. They're smart for doing that. But eventually, as a fan, right, you're sitting there watching these guys pedal it all the way down the track, bop, 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 and you go,
I know that's a topic I actually try to talk about a lot with people is how do you get more butts in a seat? How do you make it more entertaining? Part of it is, I think, knowing the drivers. Like when you watch football on TV, people that are big fans know every player on the team,
yep.
on both teams and everything, but that's not the same in drag racing. Like maybe you'll know me, maybe you'll know Garrett, maybe you don't know anybody and you're just kind of out there hoping for a good heads up race. But without any knowledge, it's like you're not invested in that at all.
I wonder if like LS Fest is that, where everyone's got their LS vehicle and everyone that is prominent in the LS world is there, and you go, oh, I want to see this guy run this, but then is there proper pairing in the classes to make it like a V3 4,200 pound cap?
It's
blah,
really
blah, blah.
tough. They have a lot of classes at their races because of that.
Because Mod Motor National, we
Yep.
have our own,
A lot of classes at that.
oh my God. Well, the funny thing is, right, there's a 6R80 Unlimited. And people literally didn't show up because Lund Racing had their car there. What they deemed to be unfair vehicle. And I'm like, I guess I see their point, but I don't at the same time. I'm like, okay, so we built a close to 6-second 6R80 car. That's what, it's a case, it's 6R80, whatever. So people would go, well, I'm not going to attend because they're there and it's not fair. They're a second and a half faster. Meanwhile, we didn't make a clean pass that whole weekend. They
Yeah.
could have won with like a 790 car. But, people don't show up because they feel, it's almost like everyone wants to be guaranteed a win. And I'm like, then there's no reason to race at all because you're not guaranteed anything.
You just want to be guaranteed your buyout back.
I know some people that join 3 or 4 classes just to get as much as possible, and they complain that their car should fit in this class because,
Yep.
and maybe that's why X275, RVW, and like those big top tier classes, I think they have something because it's so tight. But the funny thing is, like FL2K, TX2K, the A class always seems to be pretty tight by the end of the weekend.
Yeah.
It's like they're all there. Like we can't sandbag. He's a 70 car,
Yeah.
670. This is 660 car. We got to get after it.
And then there's a crazy experiment where it's almost naturally happened in stick shift. No rules, and they're all close.
I love it.
It's
I love
insane
it.
that there's no rules, and yet they're so close. Even last year at TX2K, Racing is Racing, Bryant with the black twin turbo Mustang.
Yes, he has a
won
yeah,
the unlimited class.
Yes, and I
Just
was like,
because he made it to every round.
and it was a 70 car or 80 car, 780, 790
Yeah.
car. Yeah, nothing. I mean, it's fast. And
But it wasn't a 6-second car.
then the year before, didn't a Subaru win it?
Yeah.
Or something like that. So that's what I love, and I think that works out. Supposedly, there's a race coming up, lights out. There's going to be a stick shift shootout, like big money.
8th mile stick shift shootout.
And I'm like, I'm going to that because I want to see all, and because it's big money, it should bring out the people. So yeah, to bring more butts in the seats and have more close racing, I think it has to be like super tight rules, and then people aren't willing to build their car for that.
Yeah.
They want to shove the biggest turbo, a glide, and people are like, no, you can't put a glide in it, or you got to limit the turbo size, and then you all these people don't want to even join. They'd rather street race and do other
It's like
stuff.
no lockup, converter, all that.
That's a rule?
It gets to be a rule in a lot of classes. No lockup 400, because
How much of an advantage is it?
well,
Because-
it's a $10,000 upgrade.
True.
So it almost comes down to just pricing people into the same group. Once you can,
Well, that's difficult too.
yeah.
Because if I build a GTR and you build a Fox, there's already a disparity there. So what do you limit? Like chassis? Well, yeah, you kind of do.
I can tell you, like Garrett's El Camino, when he clicks the lockup, that's like a 20-mile-an-hour gain
It's like
on the back half.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
That's a big gain. And
You
a
could
lot
hear
of
it.
classes,
You could hear the car bear down, and even Brett LaSala's car. You hear it bear down, and you're like, woof, and then you see the mile an hour, and you're like,
If I clicked a lockup in my car, the only thing you would see is the crank on the ground behind me. Yeah, it would just be like, see ya, right out the
when
bottom.
I hear it bear down on a 3,000 horse car, I'm like, ooh, that is serious. But
Yeah.
obviously, you don't do that early. You do it way at the top.
But on
end.
like a little Coyote aluminum block that's a lot of strain on
It's
a
a
car.
lot of strain. That's why I'm blown away that
Big load.
Like I'm blown away that a lot of people don't realize that most of the fast Coyotes, it's a stock block.
Yeah.
Like there is an aftermarket AccuFab block, and MMR builds a billet. Nobody runs that, and the people that do haven't there's a grudge guy. I'm sorry. There's a grudge guy. He has a billet everything.
Yep.
You don't know what he runs, but that thing is stupid. Like you see it go, and you're like, that's faster than like RVW cars. You're like, what the hell? And you don't really know it. But anyway, it's mostly a stock block. And I'm blown away that people like FFRE and stuff like that and TKM have figured out how to make a Coyote live at a stock block with that kind of power to it. But I didn't know a lot
Fast Forward is who built my engine.
Oh.
They built the 2Js for all of induction cars.
I didn't know that.
And it's funny because I go in there, every time I'm in there, it's like more and more Coyotes coming out.
It's become, the potential, now people are starting to see the potential, and it's like 11 years after it came out, and people are Coyote swapping things that normally wouldn't. Like Honda guys love it because it's two of their engines bolted together,
Yeah.
and they're like, we understand it. And I'm like, wow, that makes total sense. But they get to the point, they want to go nitro all the way. They're like, can we put nitro in it? And I'm like, no, not a stock Coyote. And they're like, well, we want to put nitro in it and rev it to 10,000. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, you don't want to do that.
Revving
right
it to
now.
10,000 is a dangerous game to play.
Luna's car has been 9,800. Ours has been like 9,800. And it's like, it sounds like a weed eater. And it's
How often are you changing like timing chains at that point?
not often at all.
Are you
usually
checking them, maintaining them? Because I know, like the aftermarket ECU guys, like Jim and Brett, they have sensors on their timing chains to
Correct.
know the stretch.
Correct. There's the aftermarket on a stock ECU. You kind of don't.
Yeah.
It just goes wing, and like there it is.
It breaks when it breaks.
You have an aftermarket company that makes like a double roller, and the stock stuff has been 1,200, 1,100, but then the aftermarket stuff you can go 1,500 and up, and it has like a double roller, and they've been pretty damn stout. Let's be honest, it's all about the engine builder. If the engine builder kind of puts it together properly, the cams are everything's honed and everything's straight, you can zing those suckers 10,000 on a stock Gen 2 ECU. I think 10 or 11,000 with a patch, but typically you don't see many over 8,100. 81, 8,200 is like where they live normally.
Yeah, that's a lot of RPM.
It sounds
for a
nuts to have
V8.
a stock Coyote, like stock NA Coyotes with a Cobra Jet intake, E85. I shipped them at 8,200 with a 10R80, and it literally sounds ridiculous. Like,
It's crazy that the 10R80 takes that.
It does, and the funny thing is taking it with 1,200 horse, but you need clutches. Someone like a Midnight built trans like Garrett has. That's in my opinion the best 10R80. Like there's Midnight, and then there's everyone else. It's almost like Tesla and everyone else is doing EVs. I think it's Midnight and everyone else is doing 10R80s.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the Midnight stuff, and then Brett used to build all the 6R80 stuff for a long time. I don't know if he still does. Still does.
Corey Grayley's stuff is 6R80. Most of the cars that were at FL2K have Brett's transmissions.
That makes sense. Yeah, I know that he always brought a bunch with him because that's
Just
where
in
I park
case.
and I look. He like opened the bed of his truck and I'm like, oh, all right.
6R80 coming up.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I know a lot of people tried to retrofit the 6R80 like in a 2J. There was like a 2J car that had a quick
Powerhouse
6.
Racing is
right.
building.
And once I saw the quick 6, I go, it's going to burn up. And people said, why? I said, the only thing that can control a 6R80 properly is either stock OEM stuff or a Motec. And that's it.
Yeah.
Everything else, because if you look at the tune, it's so stupid. Like there's oncoming, offgoing, there's turbine speed this, and there's like 80 tables. And you're like, how's a quick 6 with 3 notches gonna make that work? And usually it doesn't, it burns
I'm
up the
sure there's
clutches.
a good amount of drama in that world because even in the CTSV world, there's a lot of tuner drama on the 6R or 6L80s.
Is there?
With like, who does it good? Who tunes them well?
Okay, I didn't know there was like drama. Like drama? Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's always the tuner of the month. kind of thing where it's like, you know, all of a sudden he's better and then all of a sudden another guy's better.
Okay, so it's good to know that other platforms have similar stupid fights that
Yeah.
we do. We catch the flack because we tend to be the quickest of the stuff, and people tend to go to us when they want to go like stupid fast. But look, if you want to tune it and you run fast, great. My issue and my show is usually centered around anyone that talks shit on Lund. I go, oh, don't mention us to sell your product. Say, hey, look, I ran good. Here you go. People say, I'm better than Lund. And I'm like, dude, just stop that.
Well, it's often the supporters of a company that will do the talking shit.
Right.
Like, you know, I got my cartoon by Lund, so now I'm out there
Beating
telling
this
everybody
guy.
else they're wrong
Right.
and doing something stupid.
And I'm like, shh.
Yeah.
Like go beat them and say who, and then when they say who you're tuned by, you say Lund, and then
Yeah.
go home. No, they go back to the meet and they pop off on everyone that isn't Lund tuned. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Just say, you know, it ran good. See you later.
Go take your winner circle photo.
It's almost like, and again, I'm not in this world, but I see it. The clout chase, and you're like, look at me, and I'm like, I'm not gonna. Okay, I, Alex, will not look at you more favorably if you're on TikTok or Instagram talking shit on other people because you're tuned by us. No, I would say don't do that. Just thank you, win the race, go
Yeah.
home. But that kind of like adult way of acting is gone. Like if you win a race, right? You're not gonna get out of the car and put your hand on your crotch and go, yeah, take that, 240 guy, pull the chute out. You
Yeah.
would never do that.
No.
You say, hey man, nice race, and then
Yeah.
hope that he's nice too. That's gone.
I'll usually be like, badass car, I want to come take a look at it after.
Right.
Because I'm always trying to learn something when I'm going to the track.
Have you ever faced that? Like you're a known guy, and people I'm sure would love to beat you because you're somebody. And let's say they beat you, and then does he give you like static, like yeah, screw you, YouTuber, clout chaser, MFer?
Well, so last year at TX2K, my wife actually is still mad about this.
Oh, okay, that's a good girl.
She is still mad
That's a
about
good
this.
girl.
Like, if you bring it up to her, she'll be pissed. So the guy we raced, I was dead even with him, just like a little bit behind him. Hazards on me at 100 feet out.
The disrespect.
At 100 feet out in a quarter-mile race, the man had the hazards on me.
Dude.
Yeah, she's
West
still
Coast
mad.
guy? West Coast guy, right? Has to be a West Coast guy.
It was a Texas love truck or something like that.
Oh, yeah. So he put do you think, well, he can do it inadvertently because you have to like
No,
reach under the
he
column
did it.
and stuff.
He did it.
So what did you get back to the pits. What does your wife say to you?
She was just angry, just mad. I was like, he beat me. Like he
gets the right.
right.
He gets the right.
That's what I said. He gets the right. Like if I wanted to not have that happen,
I should have beat him.
I should have beat him.
That's very adult of you. I'm getting out with a crowbar. I'm gonna bust his lights or something. But I like that she's.
Oh, she
mad
was
about
posting
it.
angry TikToks about it and stuff and like all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, I should have beat him, But I was runner up at that event. Like that was the finals.
Oh, that's fine. Why would he? Okay, so I grew up in a very heavily Puerto Rican neighborhood in Massachusetts, and that was the thing to do in the 80s and 90s, like to just show off. I'm blown away that it came back. I'm like,
hazards.
I'm like, when did hazards become a thing again? Like 10 years ago, I started seeing it again. And
It's
I'm
definitely
like,
a street thing
Yeah.
more than a track thing.
started-
Mostly because I'm not thinking about my hazards on the track.
Imagine your hazards in a real inconvenient spot, and you reach down to try to stunt.
I was impressed, honestly. I was like, shit, like, that's the last thing I'm thinking about at 150 feet on the track.
I guarantee a lot of people have the hazard set up somewhere super convenient just for that reason. Like they have their, what do you call it? I'm not a turbo guy. To have extra boost.
Yeah.
What's it called? The scramble.
Yeah, you got your
And they have the
scramble
hazards
right there.
I love it. And the thing, back to the culture thing. I think I'm a gentleman. A lot of people see me on the channel and they see me talking shit and flipping hats and dumb. I'm a gentleman in person. Obviously, I do that because I want to be entertaining. But if I beat you, good race. If you beat me, good race. The moment you start talking all this dumb shit, I'm just like,
Yeah.
why? Like I don't know what you get out of it, because if it gets to the point of being chippy, like physical, yeah, I don't want it to get there because it's so stupid. It's a race, but it's almost like people are egging on a reaction.
Well, with me, I laugh because, like, if you come and talk to me at a racetrack, it's going to be really hard for you to not like me.
Okay.
Because I'm a very friendly person. I talk to everybody. I like you can come talk to me probably 2 months later and I'll ask you about the car you told me about in passing.
Okay.
Just because that's the type of person I am. So it's really hard for me to imagine somebody like, oh, you know, Cooper did something weird. I'm like, that, like,
But imagine,
you must not know me.
Right, but imagine someone, right, puts the hazards on you, then replays the video on Instagram, TikTok, and every other social media, makes memes with your face, like, oh, you know, like really goes out of their way to screw with you. You know you're going to eventually go, if I see you somewhere, we're going to have a conversation.
I don't know.
No?
I don't know. I
You're
just
better
don't.
than me,
I don't
man.
have that really in me. I don't really care.
Damn,
like,
how do you get there?
Completely I just let things go. Like nothing takes up space in my brain like that at all.
You must have had a really good upbringing or something, because like if you were able to just like, I mean, you know, I came up from a rougher, I'm not saying you didn't have it rough, but I'm just saying, I don't know, to be able to just let it roll off your shoulder like that, I'm just like, boy, I don't know, you're better than I am.
My parents growing up were both small business owners. My dad owned a roofing company, and like there would be people that owed him money and he'd just be like, eh.
Oh my Lord.
Like, yeah, like he's like, I don't know, I gave him a $300 bill like a couple weeks ago, but like they must need the money
So
more
your
than
dad
me.
was kind of a calmer, let it be type of dude?
Calm until he wasn't. Yeah.
Right, okay, so do you feel...
But I'm calm unless it's very required, which is very rare. Like, we don't live in a place where you're going to be fighting people all the time. We're not in like the 60s.
Correct, but right, because you can't fight anymore. It's just like everyone's got a blick or whatever. So do you think, does it accumulate? Is it like something that's like a accumulation that one day you're just lose? Like remember the movie, what's the movie where not Mel Gibson.
I don't think so, man.
He just lost his mind. He just lost his mind one time, and like he was ordering a burger, and he just lost his, and I was like, that guy was calm most of his life, and one day he just loses it. Like, no,
man,
think so?
it's just not in me. Like I don't take anything like that. Like I don't.
Wow.
Life's too short to care.
Good for you, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I can't be like that, and it's not a choice. Like I don't want to be that hothead, but it takes with age. You don't see me flipping out in person, but I remember. Like I remember, oh, you're that guy 15 years ago that gave me, like I'm stupid like that, and I don't know how to get rid of that. But I'm glad that you're. How old are you? You're not in your 30s yet, are you?
28.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, no, you're on the right track, because it's better to be that way than this way. But believe it or not, it fuels me sometimes, because if you don't have anyone talking shit on you, then you really have no motivation.
Oh, I mean, I have people talking shit on me all the time.
Who talks shit on Cooper? I'm not saying
it's the internet. I put myself out there.
Yeah.
If I wasn't getting people talking shit on me, what's the point?
But okay, what shit? Like, what can they say about Cooper?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, people are creative. Somewhat.
Because I get why they would make fun of me. I'm bald, I'm stupid, or whatever. But like, you seem to be a likable guy.
Like I'll lose a race, or like, doesn't work on my own car enough. I don't tune it myself. Like, all that stuff.
90% of the people don't tune it themselves. You know how difficult it is? Like who tunes my GT500? Junior. I don't want to be thinking about tuning. I'm like, here. And he gives me a base file, and I'm like, all right, but for me to do it from scratch and worry about what he already knows, no, let someone else do all that crap.
Yeah, man, it just doesn't bother me. I think all the years because me and Garrett, when we first started working together, like we started in a, 2-car garage, and I think I was like 21 at the time.
Okay.
So like I learned real quick, you get your shins kicked
All
the time on the internet. And if you're going to sleep with that stuff, it's not going to be a good time.
Wow, well, you're an adult. That's good. I mean, because I go to sleep angry sometimes. Like, then I wake up angry, make my eggs angry, and I'm just like, ugh. But it doesn't manifest itself in a physical sense. I just think about it, and then it does motivate me. I'll be honest. Like half of the times my show subjects are from like people that said something that I didn't like, and I just go in on them.
I will say, if in 5-10 years you're like, wow, where did Cooper go? He's gone. He's off in the mountains somewhere with his own chickens and a farm and stuff, and off the grid completely. That is a very strong potential when I'm just done with society in a whole.
Okay. Is that more likely than you losing it on somebody?
That's completely likely.
Really?
Like,
okay.
Yeah, they're like, where is he? Like, I don't know, South America. Like, that's very likely end goal.
What, if you don't mind me asking, because I'm fascinated by this mindset, because I too want to be left alone, but you need to make money, so, you kind of have to see people, unless whatever. But what aspects of modern society make you go, I just want to live on a mountain with my chickens and be left alone, dude?
I think it's mostly the your opinion's wrong, so I must hate you aspect.
Okay.
I don't agree with your opinion, so I must hate you.
Right.
Because if somebody has an opinion that I don't agree with, I want to learn their opinion.
Okay.
Like I watched a 2-hour documentary the other day on socialism,
Okay.
and it hurt every being in my body
But you watched
of
it.
why it should be in America, and
Right.
it hurt. But I had to watch it just to know.
Just to be educated and go, okay, I don't agree with any of that, but I'm well versed in it now.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. So let's say it does get too crazy in this part of the neck of the woods. Where do you go? Where's the escape? Because Florida's like the last. Even though some people say Texas, but I live there. You don't want to live in Texas.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one because it can't be too cold. Because if you want to be off the grid, you got to at least be somewhere where you can grow food.
Can't be Montana.
It can't be Montana. It can't really be Colorado. You only get a couple months out of the year.
Yep.
It's a little tough to get water in New Mexico and Arizona.
Right.
Water supply is pretty key.
Not lately though. Lately it's just like.
Lately there's a good amount, but it's illegal to collect it. You know,
Okay.
you can't collect and store your own water in those states, which is weird.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it's
In dry states,
it's government controlled. Can't collect rainwater.
it's from the sky.
Nope, you can't collect rainwater,
Government water
man.
comes from the sky. Oh, it's because it's over
Not
the
yours.
land?
It's not yours.
Interesting. Chile's like that with their avocados.
Yeah, well, because you're messing with where it's supposed to go.
Oh, but don't dams do that?
Somebody smarter than us figured out the dam. That's why, you trust the person smarter. That's what the. That's
So shouldn't
the
you
thing, right?
arrest? What are the animals that build dams? Shouldn't you arrest
Yeah,
them?
the beavers. Yep, get the beavers.
Actually, if you bring beavers into your neck of the woods, have them naturally make it up, you blame it on the beaver.
So to where I would go, I guess, would just be more towards the center of the state, in between the East Coast and the West Coast. There's a sanctuary kind of
Exactly.
abundant land, good people still.
Yep.
The only neighborhood store is a Publix and a Tractor Supply.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that, especially when I drove down from Gainesville, FL2K. I kind of came down the center of the state, and then the moment I hit 95, I went, ugh. But everything else looked pretty damn desirable. I'll be honest with you. But it's almost becoming unaffordable with the amount of influx people coming in, which is another nice thing to talk about. Like Florida, the people that are moving into this part, because we can talk about, I'd like to talk about the track stuff. The people that are moving into this part, where are they primarily from, do you think? Are they New Yorkers? Are they Michigan people? Are they Ohio people? Like,
There's definitely a lot of New Yorkers, and ironically, I see a lot of license plates that say Ontario.
Canadians. Interesting. So
Which I have a whole bit about, it's perfectly fine to tell a Canadian to go back to where they're from, but you can't do it to anyone else, right? I don't think anybody would bat an eye if you were like yelling at the Canadians to go back to Canada.
You're right. But so if you were to tell me, go back to where you're from, I would say Massachusetts. Like I would go, I don't understand. I don't understand what you're trying to get there. Like, no, Puerto Rico. I'm like, I was never from Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
But I get that. I understand that you can tell Canadians to go back.
Nobody
where they
bats
came
an
from.
eye.
That is true. I never even thought of it that way.
But I'm from Long Island, and specifically, I went to East Hampton High School. I'm from Montauk, so like.
The Hampton area?
Yes.
Okay.
I like the Hamptons. Like my high school was in East Hampton, like the most wealthy
Wow.
part of.
So are you Italian? Bogetti?
Yes.
Okay,
Italian heritage, but yeah, like most wealthy area, and we were small business owners out there. We worked for the wealthy people, but
Okay.
it was a weird area because 90% of the houses were just left empty all winter.
Because they were down here.
They were just down in Florida
Or
or in the
North
city,
Carolina,
or that was just summer houses. So like it was an empty area most of the year.
Interesting. So you grew up in that, and then at what age did you move to Florida?
18.
On your own?
Yeah.
What led to that decision?
I was just sick of New York. I turned 18 and I was like, high school was over, and they were like, "Where are you gonna go?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can just leave."
Right.
Like it didn't really occur to me. I was like, I guess I'll just go to Tampa. Seemed good enough. And
Did you know people here? Did you have friends or anything?
a couple people, not really
Did
too
you couch
many.
surf for a little bit just to kind of until you figured it out? Or?
Just came down here, went to a terrible college, got an apartment, and then just kind of lived.
Okay.
And then that's where I met Garrett and
Okay.
started with 1320 in him.
Gotcha. Okay, that's where that started. Because the first time I saw you was when I raced the Viper at FL2K Orlando. I was in the black truck against that guy with the Viper, the stick shift Viper.
Oh, yeah,
You called him
Anthony.
Lieutenant Dan or
Anthony
something like
Shun,
that. Yeah.
yep.
And I was just like, oh, that's him and whatever. And I wasn't even supposed to be there. Chris, who worked at VMP, was afraid to race the truck. And these guys were trying to set up a race. And I was in my house chilling. And Chris called me, oh, yo, you got to get up here, man. These guys want to race the truck. And I'm like, it's an automatic truck. He goes, no, they want to race a Viper. And I'm like, so I drove 2 hours like an idiot and then got together and that video did well or whatever. But I asked Fred, I'm like, do you want me to like sauce it up or do you want me to be me? I'm pretty boring. He's like, do whatever. Say, talk shit in the truck. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I guess it worked out for the better. But people know VMP from that. And then I think Garrett and them had a relationship because of that, and then the blower. So it ended up working out in the long run when you think about it. But that's the first time I think I ever saw you. You were young. That was what?
Yeah, I was probably
7 years ago.
I must have been like 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
And I had no car upbringing at all. Like
Zero.
I was not around cars at all.
So what got you
growing
into
up.
cars? The whole 1320 connection and stuff.
Just I liked them growing up. Nobody else in my family, nobody else I knew.
Nobody
nothing.
had a hot rod growing up.
No one.
Wow. So what do your parents and friends from Long Island think about this stuff?
No idea about it. They're just like, oh, it's
What?
he likes to do that racing stuff.
Oh, like they don't see you on video and go, wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever.
They think it's impressive, but like I had absolutely nobody really knows like the extent of like, you can talk to a non-car guy about like, oh, it went 170 miles an hour and like it's kind of in one ear out the
They're
other.
like, what's that mean? I'm like, in a quarter mile. That's really,
Yeah,
really
they're
fast.
like, well, doesn't the Bugatti go
230?
Yeah, that's kind of like the extent of like talking to a non-car person because those numbers mean nothing. They don't mean anything unless you're in the sport.
Yeah, like if you were to say I back half 40 mile an hour, they're like, I don't even know what the hell that means.
Even I went 7 seconds in the quarter mile. Like, doesn't mean anything. Like, we didn't have racetracks on Long Island. We didn't have drag strips.
Didn't you have Island Dragway?
Not when I was there.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm old. I'm
yeah.
dating myself.
No, we didn't have it.
Shoot. Yeah. And then that closed for the same reasons that potentially this one's the local one's in trouble with. Well, how do you think that's going to end up? Because that literally in Englishtown, Jersey, those two had the same issue. People moved in with money and they were like, it's too loud, and they had to close it down.
Yeah, I think we're 5 years from anything actually happening. Because even if they approved it today, they broke ground, we're 5 years from a house being there.
Okay.
And then we're probably another 4 years of complaints or 3 years of complaints before it's shut down. So that's how I see it at least.
9 years
Like,
of racing
at
before you
least.
hear anything.
Yeah, because like even if the housing goes through, it takes so long. It took them 2 years just to make the roads and put in all the sewage and stuff like that. So
I think that's what people don't realize. Like, I think they think once it's approved by the board that the next day there's 17 houses right up against the track.
Yeah.
Like, no, it takes a while. But I wonder if there's a contingency, like a plan B, because look, obviously it's successful, and Vic and all the guys involved and the Freedom Factory, they have to think about 20, 30 years if they want to like retire or whatever. So I wonder, like we were talking about the center of the state, if it becomes more of a viable thing. But you'd almost have to buy 100 acres around it so that no one bothers you.
yeah, and you can't just trust that the farmland you buy around there is going to be farmland. Like, because there's farmland around them right now.
Yep.
There's orange grove in front of the Freedom Factory right now. And guess what? Its plan is to be gone.
Really?
Oh, yeah, they're going to rip that orange grove right out.
And then by me, it's all owned by Florida Crystals. It's all sugarcane fields, and you can't really develop there because they have like a lease in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, okay, so that becomes, you can't build there, so what do you do? Yeah, it is interesting. I hope they can work it out, but like you said, you're at least 5 to 9 years away before anything has to be done.
Exactly. And even so, like, it would be cool if, it takes a while to develop the whole community. Start at the other end.
That makes
Start
sense.
putting houses at the other end.
You know them. They're going to be
Work
like,
slowly. Yeah, put them by the track first and then work out. Like, put them on the other end and then maybe work your way out. But then people also don't realize it's like, oh, there's plenty of room in Florida. Like, so much of it is swamp. You
Yeah,
can't
you
just
build
go
it.
build anywhere.
Right. Have
So
you ever
much of it is swamp.
flown over Florida? Like
It's-
it's like swamp. It's all mostly swamp.
That's why there's one road basically that goes through the south of Florida. It's Alligator Alley.
Alligator Alley.
That's it.
And you know what? I didn't know anything about that road, and then I had to go to Sarasota for like a friend's party, and I'm like, oh my God, if I break down, there's nothing. There's water and water. There's no stops. Maybe you could pee here and there, but whatever. But I was blown away as to how wet Florida is, and people don't realize that till they get here. So
Well, that was the whole thing with PBIR, was because everything else around it was undevelopable.
swampland, yeah.
Undevelopable. It was so tough that they were like, oh, we got to buy this. Like, this is the property we need because it's already zoned, it's already whatever, cleared.
Right.
So that's why PBIR shut down, and now they're in a...
It's like in limbo. It's
Yeah.
like weird. It's like they sold it, but then it failed some kind of like environmental review, if I'm not mistaken, and then they are just kind of like up in limbo. And then they said, oh, it doesn't matter. Even if I bought the track, I couldn't open it. I
Yeah.
could because it's under their license or whatever, and I can't just like prop it up and then make a track out of it.
Yeah, like at least tear it down. Don't just leave it there so we can all just like get teased by it. See
It's
the
literally
photos
there
of it.
with just 2 Jersey barriers and clean as hell with
Yeah.
some grass growing in between.
Well, one of the things that I worry about with tracks futures is I've heard soil sampling. I've heard rumbles of soil sampling.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing because can't imagine you could go test brand new asphalt right now and it not
Right.
fail a soil sample. It's mostly petroleum.
Mostly. And the problem is that they'll use that. Like, imagine you're at Palm Beach International, PBIR, and then you go over the berm and you test that pond water. It's going to have
Yeah.
C16, MS1, it's going to have everything in it.
Yep.
But
Trans
then-
fluid in there.
Right. A couple of rods. And then you go across the street and you have similar stuff, but not maybe as bad, but you have just as dirty as stuff. And then they'll say, oh, it's environmental study failed because you're going to hurt the sandhill cranes. Shut up. Like, just enough money makes you look the other way. So because Walmart was supposed to buy that land, if they had enough money and they wanted it, they can overlook all that
Yeah.
stuff for the tax purposes because it's a big warehouse. But now, since the economy is doing this weird stuff,
I think that Walmart's not eager to build on there either because, I mean, I don't know how well you pay attention to that stuff, but like Amazon is letting people go. They're
yes, big
closing
time.
fulfillment
Microsoft
centers.
just let a whole bunch of people go.
Is Walmart really going to build a fulfillment center right now?
No.
Or are they thinking maybe we'll just slow down on that?
Well, if you look at an overhead map of West Palm Beach and Beeline, it is like a virus with the homes. They're slowly making their way west. So I think they thought, well, it's going to keep going west, and then the east is going to keep coming west. So we're going to be smack dab in the middle, and we'll build Walmarts and distribute. But I just think, depending on the downturn of the economy, they're like, maybe not now.
Yeah, maybe we'll give it a couple years. We'll put the land in a limbo thing, and they're probably not paying taxes on it while it's in limbo
Right.
for some billionaire reason,
It is-
billion-dollar company
It
reason.
is crazy how it just went into limbo, and
Yep.
and people kind of fought for it, but not really. Look, when it's run that bad, you're not going to fight for it.
Yeah, they don't have the people to fight for it. I mean, OSW is also surrounded by, they're kind of in the same boat where things
Really?
are...
Kind of.
I
coming
mean,
in on
when
them?
I went to OSW a few years ago, that road going there wasn't even like a gas station.
Like Bithlow.
Now
I'm
there's
like, what's a Bithlow?
racetrack and there's all kinds of gas stations, there's hotels and stuff. So like, once you see the infrastructure building up around there,
It's like
you already kind of know time is ticking on that.
right, and then like, okay, so then what do you do? Like it's almost like you need to have a what do you call it? A DMZ, demilitarized, a dehomed zone.
Yeah.
Where you're like, no, this is good, and it has to be bought and paid for by the racer. But the problem is then you can't charge only $20 for a test and tune. You got to charge 60.
Yeah.
You got to charge 80. You know.
The concept I had that I'm sure other people have thought about it is the only appropriate use of an NFT would be a racetrack NFT where thousands of people buy into it. They all own a small portion.
Okay.
One person is because there's ways to have a Discord. There's ways to vote on things. You vote one person in charge.
Because you have a stake in it.
Exactly.
Right.
You own it. When it goes up in value, you sell it for more money. So it's an investment as well.
Okay.
And you could actually kind of squeeze by like that because racetracks are tough to be profitable. It is a tough situation.
But do you think a guy that puts a 4.8 in a Fox knows what an NFT is?
They don't, but if you get enough people that do and make it popular, because they were dealing with the fight with, Bandamere is fighting. Gainesville is in a good spot. There's a couple other tracks that are fighting. Kearney, Nebraska is fighting to stay open.
Gosh.
But some are just closing because the owners just can't make it profitable. Not all of them are closing because of
Homes coming in.
or liability of EPA stuff. Like, they're closing because...
But do you think racing is dying in that format?
I like to say no, and it's easy to say no because racetracks are huge right now. They're as popular as they've ever been, if not more. But it really only takes 10 to 20 years for something to completely swing. You know, one generation, you're always one generation away from losing all your freedoms.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing.
I remember growing up, and I'm sounding like one of those guys right now, but the tracks were packed. Everyone had a old Cuda, Chevelle, Camaro, or Fox, because it was like 94, 95. And it was, as far as the eye can see, cars. Nobody knew what the other guy had done. There wasn't this open mod kind of thing. And you raced, and you found out who was the baddest, and you can sell your product or whatever. And then I started seeing in the mid 2000s, 2000 to 2010, big swing down because Ford sucked.
Well,
and then
the economy kind of...
It did,
yeah.
but it's like COVID, right? COVID was funny because all car companies made money. If you sold parts during COVID, everyone just stuck in the garage and worked on their car and went street racing or whatever. And they make big money. And you would think, okay, the economy took a downturn. No, in whole it did, but our racing stuff thrived. And then now I could see like an ebb and flow of that because in the mid 2000s, tracks died almost, and then they're starting to come back. I think No Prep Kings helps because, you know, it's no prep, but it's at a track. And I kind of hate to say it, no prep is huge right now.
Yeah.
Like, it has been, but I actually have to watch no prep to get any racing action in.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, this guy's about to crash his $300,000 car. Cool. You know, I'll watch it, but
well,
I'm
it's
like...
how much tractor action you want to watch.
True.
Tractors are a big killer in radial racing.
Yep.
Watching a tractor go up and down the track hurts.
Well, Texas 2K did that for me last year. And I was like...
It hurts.
It did hurt because every time I plopped on Flow Racing, there's a tractor dragging. And I'm like, this is the Tractor Nationals.
I know. And I think about other events. Like, I have been looking at Monster Jam a lot.
Okay.
Whatever they're doing works insanely well.
Yep.
Everybody there is making a lot of money.
Yeah.
All the drivers are in cars that were all built the same by Monster Jam. And that event is thriving. They have like 3 a weekend in 3 different places. Yes, they have multiple teams.
Do you think they cater to a younger audience though? Because of the builds or like cartoon characters like wrestling used to be.
Exactly, but why can't some of that get taken into drag racing to get people in the seats, to get money into actual racers' hands? Because if you put more people in the seats, those drivers get better sponsors.
They get paid more. They won't.
And it just rolls from there because, you know.
So you're saying there has to be like an Ultimate Warrior car and like a Hulk Hogan car and like a... That's not a bad idea.
If it means that, you know, drivers can actually make money, like NASCAR, you know, 9 million people watch the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
That's why they get sponsors like Home Depot.
Yeah. Dude, I legit worked with a guy that only bought Home Depot stuff because, what's his name? Tony Stewart drove the Home Depot car. He goes, I go, hey, I got to go to Lowe's. Screw Lowe's. I go, why? He goes, I go to Home Depot. And I'm like, why? He goes, Tony Stewart. And I was like, okay, but it works.
It all just comes down to eyes. And we could all afford to race if getting eyes on racing happened more. And I could go into what flow racing has kind of done to it visually and what live feeds and actual like feeds could help with racing, but you need to somehow make it more entertaining. When a tractor is happening, that to me is mind-blowing, that there are points in a live feed where there's a tractor going up and down the track and you're not watching an interview with somebody in the pits.
Correct.
Or there's not some entertainment thing happening somewhere.
Right, some bikini model, like, I don't know, throwing t-shirts up, something. Well, in the grudge world, don't they already have that? Don't they already have characters racing each
Yeah.
other, and it is big money, crazy people behind the, like, aside from some of the racist names these cars have, which are hilarious to me, but they go out there and race, and it's like the character, like, Kong versus I
Yeah.
don't know, this car, and the donk racing. It's a character thing,
Yeah.
and people watch it. But in I don't know where we fall in that.
Yeah, we
The
kind of
street
just
guy.
we kind of just fall in where we're like street strip-ish. We're not top fuel racing where you get big sponsors.
Yeah.
We're not like we're under that significantly because even Pro 275 and those guys don't get big sponsors
No.
because they don't get the eyes on it.
Correct.
And I don't know if NHRA is getting the eyes. I don't know what their
I have not
numbers
watched
look like.
an NHRA race in forever, and the only reason I would watch this season coming up is they have a stick shift class coming up. That's like a 690 class, and a lot of people supposedly are into it. So I'd probably watch that. Factory X, it's
Yeah.
supposedly called. I'd like to see factory style cars with like an actual Challenger body with a stick going sixes. I think
Yep.
that'd be super cool. But
That would be awesome. To me, it's just eyes. Eyes. You can make a lot of money if you could just get eyes on something.
do you think a lot of people are hesitant to do it that way because of the EPA stuff? Like a lot of people they don't want to dip their toe in the water all in. Let's say they have a big cash reserve. Let's say they have a business that is thriving and they need a tax deduction. So
Yeah.
let's put $300,000 into our race program, and we're gonna paint it green and cool, and we're gonna do 13 events this year. And okay,
Yep.
well, the EPA is cracking down, and
Yeah, we don't know if we want to do that. I mean, I get that because the EPA has already said, like, oh, we support NASCAR.
NASCAR.
Which really-
She had a
really
heavy
hurt.
Boston accent.
Yeah, I'm like, it hurt me because I'm like, okay, like, cool, like, you support NASCAR, but, like, what is that, 20 drivers? 20 guys? Like,
What's that have to do with us? We
Yeah.
support NASCAR.
like, how does it help me?
And the funny thing is, right, so they, back on the EPA stuff, the VIN number stuff is what blows my mind. We were talking about the RPM Act. Tell me, if you don't mind, what some of the RPM Act does or falls short on that you go, what? Why the hell do you even include that?
I mean, it gives up, to make the analogy, it basically gives up the steak, the potatoes to keep the beans. Like, if you're going to have a dinner, it gives up all the good stuff.
What doesn't it include in your mind? What doesn't the RPM Act include? To me, it doesn't include the guy that wants to drive his car on the street.
I think if anything is giving an inch,
Let's
it's
take a foot.
yeah, exactly. So like, if your proposal is to give up a bunch of stuff in hopes that they're happy with that, your
Right.
proposal doesn't sit well with
When
me.
the RPM Act says we are fighting for the ability for a guy that has a car with a VIN to become a race car only, I'm like, what about the other 99% of people that want to put an air filter on their car? And then they go, well, we don't support that. Oh, okay. So then that keeps people like a header manufacturer in business because he can make it for a
Yeah.
car that has a VIN. Yeah, but not everyone is solely going to keep it at a track. And I've always said there should be some kind of exemption to limited miles. You don't drive this 5,000 miles a year. I don't drive any of my cars 5,000 miles a year. So I'm like, what if there's like some kind of, but then the problem, then the 2A argument starts to come in. You know, like, do you have to register somewhere? Do you have to like,
Yeah.
hey, 5,001 miles, what do you do?
Well, not a single one of my sponsors on my car care about other racers seeing their stickers. Because if the
Right.
people in the stands that showed up parked in spectator lot with their street car,
Right.
they don't care that, this transmission brand makes race car transmissions.
right.
That doesn't help them. That won't help any sponsor. Because
Like if you go to Cars and Coffee, let's say a good one, you can get a lot of eyes on this thing and people go, who, this thing runs what? Who makes the trend? And you can, at least the sponsor gets advertising out there. But if you're
Yeah.
at a racetrack where it's like advertising, I don't know, a boxing brand, 2 boxers only,
Yeah.
not anything, or people that are already in that field, you're advertising to them. No, you got to advertise to the layman that probably wants to see what's what.
yeah, why do you think like Chase Bank sponsors stadiums? Because that's
Yeah.
that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to like actually get the people that will use it. Because if I have sponsors of only race car parts and my viewers are not race car owners, it's not helping any sponsor.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, yes.
It's not helping a sponsor.
Correct.
Like, I can't provide value to a sponsor if they can't sell parts to everyone.
Correct. So the RPM Act falls short in that aspect. In my opinion, the streetcar guy, the regular everyday Joe, and they say, well, you can make your car a race car only, but then therein lies eBay,
Yeah.
PRI, and all those other people that'll say, you can't sell your tuner on our website. By the way, watch this guy shove a diesel motor in his Mustang.
Well, eBay,
I'm like,
yeah,
what?
eBay already got in trouble.
Right. So I'm like,
eBay
wait,
recently
in
got-
one breath you can go, and again, I'm not trying to make fun of anyone. eBay's the target here. You say, I can't sell a SCTX4. By the way, in the same commercial, you can promote a guy who does drag and drive events or has a car that's blowing black smoke out of the stack. So, and then PRI, same thing. They'll go up to Brent and go, well, we support you, da, da, da. And then, by the way, look at this 2,000 horsepower Camaro go down the street. And I'm like, wait, you were,
Yeah.
what? So I don't understand where, you can't play both sides. And that's what's been happening. And that's where I just kind of like feel deflated. I don't go to PRI. I don't care about PRI. I don't go to SEMA. I don't care about SEMA. A lot of people do. Fine, but they're not working for us. They're not working for the performance. Maybe they're working for like a guy that has a chassis car and races only and then comes back. Great. But the street car guy, no way.
But even my car, as I understood it, you know, it has a VIN number. I would not be able to take that VIN number off and make it a race car only.
Correct.
From my understanding, if it had a VIN number, it cannot be modified.
Period.
Yes.
Yes.
End of story.
And the motor that it came out of, or the motor that you're using, should not have been a production motor ever.
I didn't go to SEMA this year. I didn't go to PRI this year.
On purpose?
Will, mindfully, yeah.
Good.
I did like that I saw the OEMs pull out of SEMA because I wasn't happy, you know, seeing somebody talk out of both sides of their mouth.
Give
in
me an
my
example if you
opinion.
don't mind.
Like, you know, they were they're, you know, helping fight their own, I guess, like, let me reword that.
I know
So
that Ford pulled
they're-
out.
Yeah, so
And I was happy to see that, but then they said it was because it wasn't worth it, or they worded it in such a weird way that was like, well, it wasn't really worth it to us.
So by talking both sides of their mouth, like they don't support the aftermarket, but they're going to an aftermarket venue.
Gotcha.
So if you're not going to wholeheartedly support us aftermarket guys and like, you know, keeping your cars for performance guys and stuff like that, then you probably shouldn't go to an aftermarket performance venue.
That makes sense.
And that's what I didn't feel was right.
On our end of things, on Ford, we would see, it used to be called Ford Racing and then Ford Performance. Like legit, in the 90s, you can get a head cam package for a brand new Mustang. And then you can get a Whipple kit and this and this and that. Now it's like SOL. If you
Yeah.
want it, you got to go somewhere else. So then as a Mustang enthusiast or even a aftermarket enthusiast, you want to make your car your own. Like you said, it's going to be just aesthetics. So you mindfully didn't go to PRI and SEMA because of that. Is there any other reason? Like, is one more guilty than the other in terms of what they say versus what they do?
No, and I will go back. I'm not like I'm never gonna go again, like type of thing. Like I don't like the word never for that reason because, you know, it's so finite because people change and companies change what they're doing and different people come in charge. But I think with what they were doing right now isn't helping enough to the people that are supporting them.
Okay.
That it almost just feels not worth.
Like imagine going to
Trying.
SEMA to see your favorite whatever, and that person hasn't done anything to support your support of their vehicle.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Even with you guys, like, if Ford's coming out with a new vehicle, I honestly think like they should be on the phone with somebody like Lund.
crickets.
They should be
Crickets.
You should call up the guys that are like pushing your platform
Dude.
and be like, "Hey, what have you guys found? What have you seen?" Like, I get that you hired some engineers, but like there are people out there doing it.
So what and I have to tread lightly here because we still do work with, not with Ford, but our main, thing is a Ford thing. And then, it entails tuning companies that need some stuff. So we met with them and it was more of like hey, you're screwed. Whereas pre-20, hey, your kid need to go to college? Yeah, well, we need some files, or hey, we found this, try this, and there was no communication. We would like, what are you seeing at 1,000 horsepower applications with the 10R80?
Yeah.
We're seeing the E-clutch smoke. Oh, it doesn't smoke on the Camaro. What's that one have that this one does? Nothing. You need people like Manuel that literally goes to 30 of them and goes, okay, I found what to do. And then Ford should be going, how are you guys going 6s with a stock ECU? How'd you do that with our product? How did you bring our product to that kind of performance? Nothing.
There's so much to be learned there from people that are actually doing it, and I feel like Ford is giving a huge disservice to their loyal customers. And not just Ford, they're not the only ones to blame at all. Chevy and Dodge 100% are as well, and I think Toyota still does a good job at keeping enthusiasts loyal.
So give me an example, if you don't mind, because I'm totally blind to the Dodge and Chevy world, but you say Toyota is still supportive of the aftermarket, sort of?
I think they're probably the more supportive group. They've already made their claim against going to electric.
Yep, saw
and
that.
They even still make performance variants of their cars that are like next level. Like obviously Chevy and Ford do that too, but like I think what Toyota offers and the import side of things is still actually good compared to, they're still like pushing almost to allow that. Even the new Supra, there's a lot you can do to it.
You can tune the new Nissan Z, or supposedly. I saw it wasn't a standalone situation, was it? Was that a factory ECU?
They're factory ECUs.
So a brand new Z, factory ECU, able to be tuned.
Yep.
Supras and new
Big single
Toyotas,
turbo on a Supra.
able to be tuned.
Yep.
And now 24 Mustangs, you can't. So I'm like, well, what? And this is one of the subjects I talked about where, what would cause you to change platforms? Lack of support.
So personally, I'm not too platform loyal.
Right.
I drive a
Obviously.
Chevy truck. Yeah, I drive a Chevy truck because I think those were great, and I have the CTSV, but like LSs because they're good, but LS and GM are almost not even like synonymous at this point.
Okay.
Like, because if you're building an LS, like you're not using that much GM stuff.
Right.
It just happens to have been designed by GM at this point.
Right. So what I've seen is a lot of Mustang guys go to the BMW world, or the Supra, the Toyota world. They go, well, S550's become Starlight weirdness. Let me go somewhere where it's more race oriented. We see the something, I forget what it's called, the new Supra. We see that moving out, so let's just mess with that. And it's caused a shift in platform. And then the people that come into our S550 and up platform, like the S197 guy is a racer, period. The S550 is aesthetics and some race, but mostly aesthetics. It looks a good looking car if you do certain things, but I've never seen it in my tuning queue, an S197 guy say, I need it to pop and burble on diesel.
Well,
Never.
the S550s finally drive really good.
Really good.
IRS makes them drive like an actual sports car.
Right.
And, the Camaros don't really have that same level of like sports carness. I feel like
I thought the Alpha platform was something that was very good handling wise, but didn't drive well.
It just seems like it hasn't really taken off like the 550s.
Interesting. Yeah, they do drive well. Like I remember when I had an 11 Mustang. That was like the first car that got me known. It was like a stick shift 10-1 car. And then I got a red S550 and I was like, it's a spaceship. This thing is like, whoa, the AC works, like everything works, and I'm like, wow, because it was such a departure. So then you see that they basically just strung all that out all the way till 2023, different nodes, and then I see this 2024, and I'm expecting to see a completely different car. And it's like, no, it's the same car, just, a couple of turns and 2 cold airs instead of 1 cold air.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, well, if you look at like Nissan, they just announced the same GTR,
GTR,
for the last 15 years.
It's tired,
the
man.
same car, but like there's not like a Nissan GTR guy really. Like they're guys that have GTRs because that's what they like, but like the Mustang guys are like, I've had every one, and I'll have the next one.
Correct.
The GTR guys aren't really like that because if you have an R35, you're probably not an R34 guy.
Exactly. It's just like a complete departure.
Yeah.
So I noticed that the most loyal Mustang guys mod it the least. It's about the Mustang. It's about the name. It's about, I drive a Mustang. And, they'll get in a V6 and swear to God, it's badass, which is fine. But the performance guy stops at like S197, or the S550 guy has a lot of money because they're kind of an expensive car to build. And it gives you, what you put in, it'll give you back. But the guy that doesn't care about that will buy the brand new Mustang. He just doesn't care. I just want the latest one.
Yeah.
2 years in, sell mine or trade it in, and they just keep doing that forever. And that's what Ford's going to have to rely on, because the performance guy is going to ignore, probably, in my opinion, the 24 and up.
Yeah, because the guys that can actually build a car will just build a older car. Like, they'll just have to.
They have to at this point, because you can't tune it. Like, imagine right now, you, Cooper, you want to go 8s, and you get a turbo kit off the shelf. You get Brett LaSalle to build your trans, and you get axles and a drive shaft, E85 in a tune. There's an 8-second car. And you're like, wow, that's almost stupid easy. And then you want to do that to a new car, and you can't. So then you're like, okay, I already did it on the S550. I already did it on the S197. I guess I'm building an X275 coupe.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing at that point? So that's why I bought a Fox body, because I said, if I'm going to get into the old is new thing, let me kind of get, well-versed and let the channel maybe gain some traction based off of that. But it's yet to be seen.
What is it in there? Is it a small block Ford in there?
It's a 351.
Like a Windsor deal?
A 408. I think it's a 408 because it made too much power. It made 460, 470 torque. And I'm like, these things make like 200.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell? So then after do some research and pulling some stuff, it seems to have high compression. I'm thinking it's a 360 or 408, and it has a carburetor on it. And a lot of tuners, that's the other thing. Tuners, modern tuners, you give them a carburetor, they're, what the hell?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. Because I was a millwright most of my life. I was a heavy equipment mechanic. So when I got a carburetor, I'm like, all right, great. And the thing starts, and I'm adjusting, and it's satisfying the tinkering need. And yeah.
Because if you're not like a break out the laptop type of guy.
Yeah, like I have a ZR1.
It's hands-on.
I took the ZR1 out, put injectors in it, and I'm like, it's an E38 computer, I think, the ZR1s, and I'm like, I don't know. And then I look at the tables, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's just like, but then you learn what they're trying to do, and then you go, okay, so there is no wrenching, there's no satisfaction of instant stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, flash it, see what it does. The carburetor stuff, instant.
Yeah, while it's running.
While it's running, you're like, oh,
adjusting
okay,
it.
that's the wrong way, that's the
Yeah.
right way. So you get that satisfaction, and it's all analog. It's like, you floor it, it's gonna go, you let off, there's no sensor to say nothing. And it satisfies that. So I'm like, maybe I can kind of carve out a little market of the analog, old school, and the old school guys do love it, because they're like, I didn't know you knew carburetor stuff. And I'm like, that's what I grew up on. And the tuning stuff, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not some fancy badass tuner. I just know how to manipulate the tune based on what I see in the data. That's it.
Do you think, though, that starting off with carburetors and working up to a more difficult thing is the way that a start should happen, when now, somebody my age who never touched a carburetor, you hand them a laptop, and it's like, oh, this is all the stuff. It's almost overwhelming, where you kind of got it little by little.
So if you're really good at coding or researching a binary, a ones and zeros, and you have the proper programming, you don't care about cars. You care about data. You're a data-driven person. So if you look at a website that you're building and you're coding some stuff into it, you care about how it's reacting and what you have to do to change that. That's the modern tuner.
Yeah, you have a goal,
right,
and you're just trying to make the data get to you.
That's it. So now there are guys that are like super high-end race car guys, and tuners that are high, like the guy who tuned Garrett's car, the guy with the long hair. I love him. He's old school. I love that guy. I guarantee you give him a carb, he'll know what the deal is. So with me, I needed to learn by doing. So I'm not that smart. So if you were going to give me ones and zeros in front of me, I'm going to go. And then the naming is weird. Like Ford doesn't call timing. They call it SAFTOT. And you're like, SAFTOT? And he's like, yeah, it's Spark. I'm like, okay. How about throttle, ETC, electronic throttle control? I'm like, and then there's actual and desired. And you're like, so Lund Senior, who is top G, awesome guy. He's, I said, let me ask you a question. I'm having a tip-in issue with my Coyote. Where are the squirters on the carburetor in the tune? And his eyes lit up. He went, here.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, manifold volume, or there's some tip-in transient stuff. I go, what do I need to do in there to make it have more fuel? He goes, make the numbers bigger. It clicked. At that moment I went, oh. So I immediately started getting into the tuning queue of customers, seeing the data, asking questions, and going, okay. And then you understand it. The moment you understand on modern vehicles, well, throttle by wire, or drive by wire, when you floor it, the blade doesn't open. When you floor it, it requests torque. And then it does math and goes, I need this throttle angle to achieve this torque.
So you're just playing with torque management.
Torque management. So basically, if your torque tables are off, the throttle won't open all the way. No matter if you're to the wood. I've seen people on EcoBoost especially, they floor, they go, hey, throttle goes to 55. What the heck? I'm like, because it's like an internal, like a bypass. It's like an internal correction of the torque model. Because if you floor it all the way, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get all the power.
So Ford is using a very different strategy than most people would imagine.
Yeah, so that's
people think of it like a diesel truck. More air, and that's it.
That's all good. And
yeah,
I'm like,
but Ford uses a different strategy than a 1999 Cummins.
Absolutely. So when you look at a data log and you see throttle angle 85, I get so many customers that go, hey, my throttle's not opening all the way. I go, it's degrees. And they're like, well, I want it at 100. I'm like, you want it to half shut? And they're like, oh, that sounds really stupid, doesn't it? I go, yeah, I can give you 180 if you want, whatever you want. So it is a torque model. And once you figure out that everything has to do with the math, and if you're tuning the math wrong in the air tube, everything is wrong. And once you kind of figure that out, you go, okay, I'm requesting torque. Once you kind of figure that out, then you figure everything else out. But initially, I was tuning fuel, simple tunes. There's needs fuel adjustments, and they were doing well. And then they're like, all right, now you can get into the 6R80 stuff, boosted stuff. And then I got really good at TVS stuff, and I said, let me buy this, because I'm not gonna learn unless I do. So I had this 11 Coyote, it NA junk, put a TVS on it from VMP, and started tuning on it, and I'm like, oh. And then anyone that had a VMP car, they'd give me, because I'm familiar with it. Then I bought a S550 with a VMP. Then I was so good at those cars. So now it's an ESS thing. ESS is like a BMW supercharger brand, and I have that in that car. And those guys love me because...
Yeah, they're a lot in the Corvette world too, the East Coast supercharger, right?
Oh, beautiful. No. Wait, maybe.
ECS?
No, ESS.
ESS.
It's a German, it was a BMW thing.
I thought it was ECS, because there's a ECS centrifugal supercharging company.
Is there? Okay, yeah, this is ESS. They're out of New Mexico, I think, or Arizona.
Yeah, they're very similar to the ProCharger stuff.
Yeah, it literally that, and except the head unit is made out of like a titanium. It's actually pretty badass. So once I got good in that, I'm stupid. I should just take the money and bank it, but I actually buy the car, or get sponsored or given the blower, blow my car up. I go, okay, don't do that again, and then I put it out there. When I bought my F-150. We did a lot of the tuning on that. Then I rented a 2.7 EcoBoost truck, did the tuning on that. So I'm like, I'll just buy it, because the YouTube channel was semi-successful. So I'm like, I have the money, might as well, work with it. But the only cars I've had off of like pleasure is like the Shelby and the ZR1. The others are like purely learning. Yeah. 100% learning.
Yeah, I know you wanted to stick shift race that one a little bit, right?
The ZR1?
Didn't you say the Shelby was
the
stick
Shelby?
shift?
Yeah. So the Shelby was a Reed Case 400 with a cone converter, big bunny stuff. Because it was like a grudge racer who had it before. So I'm like, I don't know, I can't drive it on the street. It would get hot because it didn't have a sprag. So I'm like, I don't like it. So we put a sprag in it, drove it, went 8-1 a couple times, and I'm like, it's not fun anymore. So I sold the transmission to Lund. Lund is going to put it in their Blue Goose. And I bought a T56, face plated, the whole nine, G-force gear set. Still kind of wonky on the clutch, but I want to stick shift race that. Not many stick shift S197 GT500s have gone 8s. It's like a handful. And there is a micro record like quickest modular blower stick. I'm like, oh my God. But hey, whatever. I'll cling on to whatever. But the goals eventually is to try to get into the 7s with it. It's right now getting a new engine from Keith Ray, Wonder Racing, and getting high compression, blah, blah, blah. So I'd like to make 1300 in it, and then I'm gonna break stuff because it's a stick car, and eventually I'm gonna have to get a $5,000 Black Magic clutch. But we'll see. For now, we'll see.
Yeah, that's the tough part of stick shift racing. You got to be prepared to get a little dirty on those clutches.
Constantly, you got to get under it. Like you
Yep.
see it. You see these guys under the car putting base weight, putting more this, putting more that, and I'm like,
And it gets tough too because like if something happens, you're like, okay, was it chassis? Was it clutch? Was it tune? Was it me?
right.
There's so many
Like, how
variables.
often do you adjust bar angle on this car?
Never.
Right, because you know, okay, it does what it does. It cuts like
Yep.
125s, 123s, something like that.
It's been 117, 60
Oh,
foot. Yeah.
okay, that's legit. So you're like, leave it alone if it works.
Yeah.
But let's say you have varying track conditions and you have to take weight out of the base weight of the clutch.
Yep.
And then you go, well, do I need more bar angle, less bar angle, or more base weight? And you're like, so you,
And the kind of racing we do is where you can set your clutch what you think the track was at 11 a.m.
then it's greasy.
And then all of a sudden you're not making your pass till 3 o'clock.
Yep, then it's greasy as hell and you're
Track
just like,
conditions are completely different.
so it takes like a special kind of nut job to kind of do
Yeah.
competitive stick shift racing, like the grub worms, the
Well,
Garrett. like it takes a,
well, two of the people that do it own transmission companies.
and that's what I think is perfect for them.
Yeah.
Granis and Grubworm, they are perfect because look at what our transmissions can do. Yours
Yep.
can too. I'm like badass.
They're probably the biggest T56 sellers in the country.
And everyone else, I go, why are you doing this? Like, what is happening? But I love it because it's like a great equalizer. I do have a bit of a gripe with the pro top end stuff with the strain gauges. I'm like, I wish you guys were clutching in, but I understand at 3,000 horse, sometimes you just don't want to clutch in, and it could unsettle the car. Who knows? But it is awesome to watch. I watch it and I'm like, every single time there's a stick shift race, I watch. That's why some Coyote stock stuff was really alluring to me because of the stock engine, stock tune, stick, and minimum weight. Go. And those are the rules. And those guys seem to be super competitive. So, yeah, I'd like to stick shift race the GT500, but not competitively. Like, go to a dumb local track and just mess
Yeah.
around because I don't have that kind of money, dude, or time or patience.
Yeah, go to TX2K and stick shift race your car, try to get into World Cup.
Forget it. Yeah, like those people, like you've seen them. You've seen the people that like have their motor apart in between rounds, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, you go up to World Cup and like if you walk around the pits at night and there's not a bunch of people with their motors out, something's weird.
Something's wrong, right? You
Yeah.
see Honda guys just casually taking a whole motor out, GTR guys, transmissions on pallets, and I'm like, I'm just
crazy
not that guy.
because I think even the blue car, didn't they have to put a motor in it? The 6 second
Yes.
Brian's car?
Yeah, Brian Luna from Mexico Racing League. They it didn't blow up, but it pressurized the coolant, and they're like,
yeah.
we don't want to.
That's what you have to be prepared to do at that level.
And I was blown away that they took an extra motor from Houston all the way to Maryland, and they all hauled ass there. Aldo and all those guys got to it, got it done, and they went rounds, but during testing, it went 200 mile an hour, 7.0, and then they came back on the same motor and it went 6s, and I was like, boy, that's on a Coyote to switch a motor. You're all night.
It's a big job.
All night. So like how. I don't know, what would it take to swap this guy out? Let's say you have 3 people with you that really know the ins and outs of this car, like really know it intimately. How long do you think it'll take to swap out a motor and get it running?
I can take that motor out alone in an hour.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, a little cheating. It's a little slower, not on a lift, but I can have it out in maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours, not on a lift.
Is it because it comes out from the bottom?
No, it comes right out on the top, but it comes out, twists, and everything for the most part stays.
Okay.
And it's not too crazy. Getting it back in and running is probably another 3-hour job. Maybe 3-4 hours.
What do you use for tuning on this?
Pro EFI.
Pro EFI? Really? I haven't heard that in a little bit. Is that what your engine builder or whoever that they prefer? Or?
Alpha said when we built it, he said just put a Pro EFI in it. And, obviously we built it a few years ago. His opinion may change not because Pro EFI obviously got worse, just
Things
because
got
there's
better.
so many other options now. Because now Fuel Tech has a pretty good program with the 2Js.
Okay.
Motec obviously has become more attainable for people.
Right. It used to be crazy money for that stuff, and then
like
couldn't
5
find
years
chips
ago.
or whatever, or wires or whatever.
5 years ago, if somebody said they had a Motec, it was like,
Ooh, you're
whoa,
rich.
wow, yeah.
Bougie.
geez. Now it's like, okay, like a lot of cars have it now.
Right. Okay. So yeah, with a Coyote, with a Power Glide, it's a little easier, but the fact that it was twin turbo and all that stuff had to come out,
Yeah.
put in, repressure. I mean, it was a big job, but Aldo is one of those crazy racer type. You know them. There's this guy that does, a guy that wakes up and thinks about racing the whole time. Doesn't brush his teeth. He smokes like first 2 seconds of the day, and he's like, let's go racing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that's a good guy to have in your camp. But I'm not that guy.
Yeah, I mean, if that's drag and drive mentality. Like, if you're like, you'll be on a drag and drive and somebody just like middle of nowhere just put a rod through their motor. They're like, all right, like get some JB Weld, like
Get some rods.
like immediately before they're even like thinking of like, oh man, like they're already just thinking of like, all right, how do I like gotta put it back together.
And that's why I watched Drag Week, the initial Drag Week before the whole sick week and all the other stuff came around. It was so impressive to see guys that are winning nothing. They're winning nothing. They just want to say they did it.
Yeah.
And then you see guys doing it at a level of low sixes, high fives. And I go, what the F does it take? And then you see what it takes to run that. You go, oh my God. Like, you feel like your 8-second car is like peasant mobile. You're like, I'm a peasant.
Well, like Tom Bailey, who runs Sick Week and has the 6-second cars, he could run any racing series he wants for that money. With the money that he has into Drag and Drive, he can run any events he wants. He can run Pro Mod, he can run anything.
Right.
And he chooses Drag and Drive. So it's a very interesting thing.
It blows my mind, but it's also good to see a guy that can run Pro Mod stuff and go, no, I want to do Drag and Drive stuff, and to prove a point that I have the baddest Drag and Drive car on the planet. And I love, love, love that stuff.
It's the community. It really is. It's the people.
Really?
Because everyone on those events, they all just went through the same punishment for the last 7 days or whatever it is. They're very connected, like on the side of the road together, like broken down, like very connected group of people. And it's really only in that, and also because it's not heads up racing, I think it also brings a little bit different of sportsmanship. You're only trying for your number.
That's why when I did run, I never had a car that fit any class. Either the power rider was not allowed or the car was too heavy or whatever. I ran True Street. I actually love True Street. I love driving there, driving 30 miles, getting back, and some didn't allow you to ice in between runs, but now they do. Now they're like, yeah, we're not going to have you burn it down. And I thought that was such a great equalizer. And on the Ford side of things, on NMRA stuff, that would be a very Bowling Green, NMRA, True Street, 200 plus cars.
Yeah.
It's stupid. But it's almost like they purposely sometimes screw themselves, like with exhaust stuff. Like, how are you going to have a twin turbo car have stock tailpipes? Like, like exhaust comes out. Like, you have to have some leeway. And they're like, no, it's got to be like registerable in your state. And I'm like, come on, man.
The rules are tough sometimes in that deal, especially for like NMRA, and that's partially why they've been kind of in a weird spot, I think, the last couple of years.
I hate to say it, but they're slowly going away. Like, you could see it. You could see them fading a little bit, and you don't want that, because what other event do Ford guys have? You can go to NMCA, but then you got to like make your car fit a certain class, and then you don't know what to do. You don't do NHR, IHR stuff.
And they can't restructure because they're going to hurt their fans that are diehards, but they have the ability to restructure because they have the people, they have the event structure. They just need to like change it.
Do you know that Turbo Coyote was one of the hottest classes in there, and it went away, I think, because of politics. Like, people didn't like the fact that this guy had a big single versus twins. I'm like, it's a run what you brung class, but it got politicky.
Yeah.
And I see that. Have you seen that a lot lately? A lot of people arguing that certain cars shouldn't be in this class because of feelings.
I do it.
You do it?
I do it based on emotion only.
Give me an example. Give me an example. Like,
I do it with my friends.
You're like, no, you can't run. You run 690s, bro. What are you doing?
Every event promoter that puts on an event, I get on them. I'm like, don't allow twin turbo Coyotes. I was getting on Victor at FL2K. I get on. I think I've commented
That's
on
funny.
TX2K
That's funny.
stuff. Like,
Okay.
because there's a select few people that I'm definitely directly talking to. When
Absolutely.
I say it.
Yeah,
And
they're like,
my
I don't want
friends.
to race that guy, this guy, that. Yeah, I don't want a green twin turbo car. Yeah,
Exactly,
I get it. So,
exactly.
no, I get that 100%. But there are people that, for example, the biggest controversy that we have in the 6R80 world is that Power by the Hour developed a hub that made a 6R80 3-speed. So now it's a re-geared 400,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. But it is still controlled by the Ford ECU. And people were like, well, it's not a 6R80 anymore because you don't have all 6 gears. So we would say, how many times have you hit all 6 gears going down the track? No, you put a 273 so that you only hit 3 gears going down the track in the final drive.
Yeah.
So when we, with Jake PBH, developed that hub, people just got salty and didn't even want to compete if a car had a 4R200 is what he called it.
I get that you take like a significant amount of like resistance and
Rotating mass, a bunch
out
of
of the
stuff.
transmission,
Yep.
but it's really not.
So a T56,
Crazy.
in your opinion, if I remove 5th and 6th from a T56 and put a G-force or badass gear set, is it a T56?
No, now it's a T4.
I knew you'd go there because I'm like Grannis's car is a T56.
But
I
yeah, of
but I
course it
doubt he
doesn't
puts
have
it
those
in
gears.
5th and 6th.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the
It
same.
doesn't have those gears. They don't even put the gear set.
That's the same argument I have with the 4R200 and 6R80 guys, and they don't want to hear it. And I'm like, wait a minute, Grannis and Grubworm have T56s. It's not a T4 or T40, whatever. It's a T56 case, doesn't have 5th and 6th.
It's not like a pro stock transmission that just like falls into gear.
It just, not that it affects you, but it kind of does. Eventually you just go, I don't want to go, I don't care. It's such a silly argument, but we all have those little niche arguments in our communities, and I'm sure you have them too, but eventually, like I talked about the culture before, it takes the wind out of your sails. Like I'll be honest with you, this is where I'm at the point now. I'd rather go to a rental at Bradenton, run the number, go home, and be left alone. I don't win nothing. I don't talk to nobody. I say, here you go, Vic, or here, what's the other guy's name that does the prep?
Yeah, Wade.
Wade, here you go, Wade. Here's $200 or $300. Sign my name away, run a number, put it back in the trailer. It's almost like you going up on the mountain with chickens and being left alone.
See, I'm the opposite though. Testing my car to me is boring. Going and making a pass where there's not somebody else on the other.
So you like racing?
In the other lane.
So you like racing?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't care to take out my car to make passes.
I do. Because I avoid people.
But like to me, like a Hail Mary pass means nothing.
Okay.
I don't care. Like it doesn't excite me. I get excited about records and stuff for people, but like there's no record for me. There's no record for a 2J Camaro.
Actually, you got it.
Nothing. Yeah, I have that. I have fastest 6-cylinder Camaro. Right. I got that.
Well, be careful. There's some 3.8, 4.3.
If they want to pull into the lane next to me, I will happily race them.
Gotcha. That's good.
If it has a VIN number, because there's some pro mod Camaro out there.
Oh, yeah,
I know that has one. But if it has a VIN number, I will beat it as a 6-cylinder.
So you get off of the competition.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Letting off the button with somebody in the lane next to me is the only car activity I truly care to do.
Really? Yeah. Like I guess I like it too, but because of maybe my position, I need less. Like I talk to people all day for 8 hours, and we type and this and why just and then I just want to be left alone. So when you finally get in your car, and let's say for instance you get in your car, and you're tuning someone's car, and they talk to you about their car when you're trying to get in the zone with your car. Texas 2K was awful for me too. People were like, hey, what about this, man? What about that? Well, hey, my car does this. And I'm just like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. I'm getting in my car. I forget the ice.
Yeah.
I forget to turn on the intercooler pump. I was
Well,
like, this.
I actually learned that a lot with Garrett, and I get that still. I'll have people come up to me that just know me from the internet talking to me. I'll be strapped in one car back from making my pass, and,
Hey, man.
and there'll be somebody at the window, and I'm talking to them. We're having a conversation about what he had for dinner last night or something, like the most obscure thing. And then
you got to get ready to race.
Yeah.
Okay, then maybe you have
I have
better...
a different understanding, but I don't owe that person anything like you do, because you kind of have a financial tie to that person.
Correct.
I could just be like, hey, kind of shoo.
Right, and if I do that, I'm the biggest a-hole on the planet. If I was to get, hey, like the car came back and I thought I blew it up, and it's making this crazy racket. Come to find out, I blew the EGR bung out of the header, but I didn't know that at the time. So everyone's like, hey, what's wrong with the car? It sounds like a chain. And I'm just like, but I can't do that, because if I freak out, there's some idiot with his phone or whatever. So I'm just like, hey, can you guys give me a break? I'm going to diagnose the car. No, they want to help. And I'm like, I understand you want to help, but you're actually not helping. So eventually you just like, get the F out of here, but you don't want to be that guy. So Like when I go racing, I want to just go. Like when PBR was open, it was awesome. I'll be honest with you. It was 15 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
I'd go there, turn the car on. No one knows me, which is awesome. And I'm just running, and it was awesome. And then once that went away, there's a big void. And you're like, I can't go racing. I can't do anything. I have to either race on the street and get in trouble. I got a $130 mile an hour speeding ticket like an idiot one time. Paid $1,000, stupid, and points on my license, and had to go to the driving school.
Insurance goes up.
Everything, and I'm just like, that's not worth it. So now I go to Mexico.
Yeah, I don't drive fast. Like I don't race on the street like that. If I get pulled over for speeding, I mean, it is what it is. Like that's the risk that's the risk I sign up for when I know the speed limit and I go too fast. But when we were supposed to race at TX2K, I now make it a point to where if the car breaks and I'm not going to fix it, put it on the trailer and leave.
Right.
Or else you're getting asked by every person what broke when you don't even know yet. I don't diagnose the car. Like for an extent, you know that your car's broken enough to where you're not going to diagnose it at the track and fix it.
Right.
My car, when we were supposed to race at TX2K, was on fire at 150 over the windshield.
No.
Like transmission fluid coming out over the windshield, like fire, under the car, all kinds of stuff. I wasn't going to fix it.
Let me just see what's going on underneath you.
Yeah,
it's on fire.
Yeah, so I put it on the trailer and I'm like, I'm going to just, kind of like lay low
Chill
on
out.
it. Yeah,
Right.
make it seem like it's not doing anything anymore. So then I don't get the million questions.
Well, we didn't race, and I didn't have a buy because I did the same thing. The voltage was low, IATs were through the roof, the intercooler pump wasn't working, and I'm like, I'm not going to make a pass and burn it down for a bypass to test things. I'll just go home. So no one raced that round. I just went home, and I was just super frustrated because, one, I have no track by my house. Two, I can't test anything unless I drive it 3 hours, Bradenton or Orlando.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, let me go on the street. It doesn't hook on the street, 1,200 horse car. It just doesn't hook. So you're like, what do? Put it on a dyno? I mean, I have access to a dyno, but I don't care.
Yeah, that ain't cool.
It's not shifting, it's not launching, it's not anything. So
Yeah.
all you're testing is what it does between 4,000 and 7,000 in third gear. And I'm like, this is not fun. So for the people that we're talking about the Bradenton and other tracks closing, I guess people don't understand the passion those people have with that automotive hobby, because that's a release. It puts your mind at ease. You're happy.
Yeah.
But then when that gets taken away, I'm experiencing that right now. I have nowhere to go unless I drive 2 hours or 3 to do anything. And I've done that a couple of times where I drive 10, 12 hours and get one pass in because the car breaks. And I'm like,
that's the other
isn't fun.
unfortunate part. If you're very far from home and you have a lot of financial obligation at that point to make something happen, things aren't as fun. And unfortunately, I've seen that where once you're financially invested in being at an event, even if you think you shouldn't run the car again,
You have to.
for your best judgment, like you're like, oh, I really shouldn't run the car again. I'm either going to break something, it's going to blow up, like oil it down. You do because you're in that situation.
If I wasn't in this field, I think I would enjoy it more. Meaning, if I wasn't tuning and cars were my hobby, not my job, I would actually enjoy it a lot more. But right now, it's I'll be honest, it's miserable. It's miserable because you have to fix and be responsible for thousands of people's messed up cars as opposed to your own. So don't make your hobby your main job.
Is it easier for remote tuning to truly be remote when your customer's at the track? Like say you have 4 cars going to Bradenton this weekend to test.
Yep.
Is it easier because I know Lund does that for a bunch of the guys I race with.
Yes.
Is it easier for him to be remote than actually there?
Abso-freaking-lutely.
So that's really tough because then you can't even truly just be there enjoying it because, hey, can you look at this real quick? Like,
Right. So, okay, I'll give you an example. I'm sitting in front of my laptop and I get 3 guys at 3 different tracks, data logs. So I look at one data log, looks good, adjust shift points, buy, email. Give me another hit. Next guy, oh, you need more timing here. Done. I am now waiting for data logs again, and I've done about half hour's worth of work. And then he sends me another log. Now, what on the other end, the customer's like, data log sent, revision, put it in the car, run it. Oh, it went. Here's the data log. In person, plug into the car, sit down, listen to what he thinks is happening.
yeah.
Hey, man, it's kind of breaking up between the 3-4 shift. You think we could flare?
Have his debate of like, oh, should we put more power into like?
can we add more timing between the 2-3 and can we shift it at 50 RPMs more? And I'm just like,
You want to leave on 5 RPM more?
right. So what I do remotely is add 3 pounds of boost, another hit. And by the end of a 4th or 5th run at a rental, that car has gone to personal best, the customer is ecstatic, and I've done my job. In person, I have to plug it in, data log it, listen, and then really you have to look at the person and talk to them and go, oh, okay, and then you have to interact. And now you're not tuning, you're consulting.
It's a lot more customer service.
So when a customer tells me, I need you in Puerto Rico tomorrow to tune my car, I go, no, I don't. You need to send me data logs. And they go, well, that's not going to be as good. I go, yes, it is. Trust me, all I need to see, because modern data logs are so, you could tell me something, and the data log is saying you're lying. You'll say, Alex, I was to the wood and this thing doesn't go anywhere. And I'm like, data log says you're half throttle. And you're like, no, I was full throttle. Data log says you're half throttle. Then they go back out there and they go full throttle and the car magically works.
Well, especially with the cars that have a lot of data. Because like race cars where they have track temperature, tire temperature, converter temp, air temp, like barometric data.
Yeah, if you are a tuner that's tuning a standalone car, you need to be there. You need to see if you're tuning the suspension, if you're tuning the traction control, if you're tuning bar angle, you need to be there.
Yeah, but like even that, they have shock sensors.
You're right.
And they have G-force sensors and all kinds of crazy stuff that like there's such an ability to tune remotely on true race cars where you can see so much.
And a lot of people think that's not real tuning. And I've had this discussion with people. They say, well, a real good dyno tune is a true good tune. And I'm like, so a stationary device that you do a watt pull in 1 gear is better than you driving on the street going through 4 gears and me dialing that in. And they're like, I'm like, ultimate is track stuff. The ultimate is track stuff. And like you said, if it has shock sensors, if it has back pressure sensors, if it has EGT, oh my Lord.
Yeah.
I sit on your ass and have 15 screens and you're like, I can dial this thing into, within
every bit of data you can imagine. And I often wonder if some people go too far into the data crazy where they're chasing their tail on things because, one exhaust temperature with 2 degrees different. And then you're suddenly in this like crazy data mindset where it's too much.
I'll give you an example. I think a mix of old school and new school is really, really important. Let's say this thing is doing bumper dragging wheelies, or not bumper dragging wheel, but a really good power wheelie. It's just, and you're like, I'm not comfortable because at night, this thing might light off a little better and get up there. Well, some might take away from the timing ramp, but you're like, I don't want to suffer the loss of the 60 foot. So some people just shove a lead weight in the front.
Yeah.
Tuners generally don't do that. They'll go, well, I'll give you a better timing ramp. Now your 117 becomes a 121 and you get beat by and you go, if I had that back and had the nose down, I would have been good.
Well, there's also the 2 kinds of tuners. There's the one where, it didn't hook, close the laptop and walk away. And then there's the tuner that's like, let's figure it out.
Right.
Because you obviously pay for what you get and you pay for the experience and stuff like that. But Alpha's always been really good with that. It's like, we work together. Who tunes my car? We work together to get the car to go fast. And that's not I have to deal with all this side of things and he just makes the chassis. Like he just makes the engine make power.
When you have a good relationship with your tuner, it's mutually beneficial. Your car runs faster, he gets better data, he has a more refined version of a tune. Like for instance, I have maybe 10 guys that are like loyal, like they don't care if I start selling like, cooking pans, they'll buy it. They're like, I don't care. So they give me such good data that I can lean on them to go, hey man, do me a favor, try something else, do this. And they give me the exact data I need. And then they get a draggy, they love data too. And then I take that tune, because it's a refined version 86, and give it to the next guy, and it's repeatable. And I go, that's the great thing about a good relationship, it's mutually beneficial. There's a lot of people that tune shop. They'll literally stuff a cold air in the car and judge your tuning abilities based on a 91 octane cold air tune. They'll go, I want one from this one, and this one. Tune it, run it, tune it, run it, tune it, run it. This guy's the best. I go, you got to give me more data, or you should work, let's say, refine them all. And then you can make your, one tune done, Lund sucks. I'm like, cool.
an interesting thing that I've been thinking about a lot is artificial intelligence.
Okay.
It's very smart. Could you just give it that data log at some point and it tell you what you need to do or just make the changes? That's
Yes.
where I think we're not far off from. In drag racing, yes, but in most things we're pretty close. I mean, they're already reading the stock market and picking the best winners and
Right.
losers. Who's to say that your car is so complicated that it can't
So if you look at an HP Tuner's data
look
log,
at 50 data logs simultaneously?
yeah, and go, by the way, this is the best course of action.
And make changes, do this.
Well, therein lies a problem. You open the door for AI to kill humans because
Yeah.
that's the best way to protect them.
Well, why do you think I already plan to live on a mountain?
Like, iRobot is so good, it's scary. Well, the best way to protect you, we are tasked to protect you. So you guys kill each other, so stay in your house, you're locked in. So with AI, I think you could, for example, an HP Tuner's data log, if you configure properly, will tell you the correction for the MEF and the spark and the knock and torque output. So you could literally write some kind of program that says, make corrections based on this.
Yeah.
And it'll go boop.
So, but like even more insane, like a race car that has 200 points of data, 300 points of data for every shock, every sensor, outdoor, like air over the car, that kind of stuff, like super sensor where obviously nobody is smart enough to read that,
Right.
those sensors, but you could plug it into a computer and it could read it all in milliseconds and punch you out what you need.
And imagine it recommends bar angle,
Exactly. It knows the car,
arrow,
knows the geometry.
timing ramp. It goes, you're better off leaving at 12 pounds with this barrel, with this track temp versus this, and this. And you could literally have an AI spit something out at you, which is basically, I kind of think that's what we're doing already, but we're just the interface. The computer's already, based on the math, telling you what's happening. And
Yeah.
the correction is just the opposite. And you go, so you need less of this because I gave you too much of this. So we just need someone to interpret the data that isn't a human.
That's what I mean. Like it's basically hyper interpretation of the data, but also judgment as well, based off of what changes were previously made to get to some results.
Have you messed with ChatGPT yet?
I've played with it, yeah.
It's funny because depending on what you give it, it'll have a predictable answer. Seems left-leaning to me. The more you talk to me, like you're a Democrat, aren't you?
Yeah.
So, but if it can write a homework and base a play based on Biggie Smalls' upbringing,
Yeah.
when he lived in L.A. and has the voice of Snoop Dogg, it just spits it out. But there is a lack of. There's a human touch that's just missing, and
But
it's
when we think we're on
intuition.
version 1 of it,
No.
it's version 1.
Exactly.
And
Imagine-
it's already impressive.
Imagine, like, you remember what an iPhone used to look like versus what it looked like. Kind of weird.
Oh, yeah.
It got bigger.
Yep.
But the processing power. So yeah, in 5 years, what's that going to look like? And what jobs will it take? Coding jobs. What kind of job will ChatGPT take away from a coder? Let's say you want to do a website. Code me a website.
Well,
Bam.
I used it the other day. I was doing something else, and I had to send a sponsor email. So, write me a sponsor email.
Stop. Dude.
Like that. 3 paragraphs, nice. You just plug in the names of stuff.
Did
send
you read
out.
it, proofread it, and make
Oh,
sure
I
it didn't
read
sound
it.
ridiculous? Like,
I read it, and
kill
it was-
humans.
I read it and it was better than what I would have written.
Really?
Well, because I'm short when I email because people don't have time for that. So, make it a little nicer is helpful.
And then it puts the proper punctuation and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's better grammatically than I will be.
My God, you know what? I'm gonna ChatGPT my replies to customers.
That's what I mean. So imagine it could just take that out for you.
Imagine there's a plugin.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Oh.
If it could just take out your having to, it could be an assistant basically at first.
If I can ChatGPT a plugin into Zendesk and say, when the customer says, hey man, what do you think I should do? And it just spits out an answer and I proofread and go, yeah, that's about right, and just hit send.
Yeah. I don't think we're far off from that stuff.
Well, are you a proponent or of having a brain implant that your processing power is accelerated? This isn't car related. but I
No,
just like-
personally, I don't see a need for a brain implant, but I have the use of all my appendages.
Is that
For
slower?
people that don't,
Is that slower than the process? Meaning Google. Let's say you can Google in your head, answer comes up.
no, I mean like if it can help somebody that may not be able to walk, I'm all for it.
Oh, I gotcha. I understand. I thought
You know,
meant the
like if somebody has
communication.
like, you know, no use of their arm,
Right, the
and
neural
you
connection
can put
is
something in
gone.
there and it fixes that,
Awesome.
all for it.
Right. But what if at the same time, because maybe it's not one or the other, they become superhuman and they're like Googling stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly thrilled about that because it's definitely a tough thing because then, you know, if you don't have it, you're at a disadvantage in life.
Imagine there's a chip that will help a paralyzed person walk, but also makes them a supervillain.
Yeah,
What do you do?
we're not far from all of that.
And that's crazy because when I was a kid, you know, I watched Terminator as a kid. And I was like, oh my God. And now the older I get, I'm like, oh my God, it's like, we're getting really
Yeah.
close because Skynet was a software program. And once it was lit up, it killed humans. And I'm like, we're getting close to that. So
It's actually a great storyline because they thought they were stopping Skynet.
and it
really,
was
they were
the
just
virus.
hiding from it.
Right, it was the virus.
They
and
were
then
just planning to hide from it.
Right, and I'm like, interesting because if you allow AI to tune, will it do a better job than a human? And I would almost say yes.
Yeah, I mean, what do we have computers do that do a worse job than us? As like, you know what I mean? Like every time there's a computer implemented to do something, it's doing a better job than the people that were doing it before, for the most part.
And the input device is the human. That's where the error comes in. Like if I fat finger is what we call when we like mess something up in the tune, a decimal, now you're getting 400 degrees of
Yeah.
timing as opposed to 40. So that maybe it cuts down on that, but I don't know if you would give it 100% control. I'm sure this has to be some kind of checks and balances, but if it's a true AI, can it just override that?
And just to preface this, because people will say it, they'll be like, "Oh, Holly already does that with self-correcting fuel." It is nowhere near what I'm talking
Are they
about.
saying Holly is an AI?
I think people that don't realize the level of what AI actually is meant to do
Right.
think that self-fuel correcting is like, it's a small step in the way to it, but it's nowhere near
No,
what
it's
I'm
not
talking
connected
about.
to the internet. It's not learning.
No.
Well, I mean, it's learning a correction. It's a math problem.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, when a math problem, well, let's think about that. Let's think about that. Is that a small form of AI?
It's the stepping stones.
Okay.
For sure. It's definitely not, I
The
wouldn't call it
amoeba.
intelligent. Because
you-
it's never going to send you a message across your screen that says, hey, you know, take a
Wait.
pound of tire pressure out.
But it will say manifold over pressure. It will say,
Yeah.
you know, so
Because that's what I imagine it. Like, you know, someday you're looking at your screen, you're pulling into the beams, and it's like, hey, it's hot. Do this.
Right.
Take a pound of air out of the tires, because the only thing that it can actually do is in the physical realm.
I wonder, but the thing is, okay, it would need so much data. It would need so many different DA measurements, track temp measurements, tire pressure. It would need you to populate that data, and that would require hundreds of runs.
Well, most cars already have it.
Yeah.
Like most pro cars already have that data. Like I know Garrett's El Camino has all that data.
Yeah, it has really
Wheelie sensors.
refined
it
data.
has track temperature, tire temperature, shock sensors, turbo impeller wheel speed sensors.
Yep.
You have all the data, but nobody can interpret all of that.
So okay, but then who programs the chat GP? The person programming the chat or the AI has to know the corrections, or do you think it allows
It's
it to
self-learning.
learn?
It's self-learning.
So you're saying a Holly computer on a on a shock sensor? No, it is interesting if AI could tune better than a tuner, and I think if you give it enough data and it's 100% data driven, sure. I see no reason. I see no viable argument why that can't happen. So I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's obviously, I don't think it will happen, mostly because the cost to
Yeah,
do
and
it.
you're tuning 0.002% of the industry. You know that
Exactly.
You know, what are you doing?
I think it's a possibility. I think, you know, airplanes we may see mostly AI piloted, for example.
Aren't they? Now?
They have autopilot, but I think it kind of just keeps it straight and
But do you know how many corrections it makes?
I don't know.
And it's predictive, meaning it is a predictive model. So when you're on an airplane and you're like, this is smooth, and then you turn off the autopilot, and the human is trying to
Yeah.
correct it. It's so many So I think there's a predictive model that goes into like Boeing says, if this, it's similar to tuning, right? So tuning, it's if then, if this happens, then this happens. If in turn this happens, and it's always a learning model. That's why short-term fuel trims on a car are a average of what's happening in real time. Long-term fuel trims is the predictive model that's done over a longer period of time. So it's a minute form of learning. So it is kind of predictive AI, but it is not connected to the internet.
I guess it only really gets scary once it goes into like a predator drone.
Well, it needs to be connected to the internet.
Once a predator drone that isn't controlled by a human at all has AI, then maybe it gets a little freaky.
Well, didn't the movie Interstellar have that, where they had a drone that nuclear powered and it would just stay up there forever and it would just shoot people that it felt like it should just shoot?
Well, it was Eagle Eye, Shia LaBeouf.
Yes.
Yeah, he went crazy after that. He lost his mind.
Now I see why you want to move up to a mountain, man. Look, I think the AI stuff is super interesting and scary because I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think we're at a point in civilization that we should have that introduced. I don't know if you're an optimist or a pessimist. I'm more of a pessimist when it comes to people. I don't think we're smart enough or evolved enough to have an AI work for us like that. There's too many nefarious characters that want to use it for evil.
I just consider myself a realist, I guess.
Okay, that's better.
Kind of like
I'm more of a pessimist.
I just realist based off of the things I've read in history books.
So would you trust AI to handle your investing?
No, but I don't trust the guy to do that now.
Right? No, I get it.
You know what I mean?
But let's say I have $1,000 laying around that I could just go, here you go, AI, do your thing, bro. And the sucker returns 10 grand in a quarter. I'm like, here, take the 10 grand, and give me 2, take 8 and do your thing. And it does a great job. But then what happens? Do investment firms outlaw AI predictive models for that? Because it's data. It's just a histogram of data.
They can try, but I mean, if you look at what Wall Street has done, where it used to be a ticker that was coming this quickly, they didn't stay to that. They didn't stick to that.
You're right. They
evolved, and then there was people on the freaking center line buying, selling with pieces of scrap
that went
paper.
Away. Yeah.
And now
it's all digital.
Now nobody's even in New York City anymore because all of it's useless.
It's all digital. I don't even know where they have it anymore because it's all in thin air somewhere.
The only reason is because of precedent. It's because they always did it this way.
Yeah.
It's the only reason things are mostly done the same way.
I would love for some guy that has, Elon is a good example of someone that has a lot of money and does what he wants with it, whether it's for the greater good or not, whatever. But I like the fact that he's like, I'm buying Twitter and I'm going to make it better. Cool. Imagine there's someone out there that's like, I want AI to do everything for me. And let's say they're a hot rod guy and they're like, can it tune better than I can?
Yeah. I don't see why it can't. Especially, the electric vehicles are a great example of how they can torque manage so well.
In rain, you can go 9.
Simple, yeah. That's just a very simple form of intelligence, kind of torque managing a car.
Have you seen what the data looks like on a Tesla when it does self-drive?
I've seen
it scares me that it knows what a child is behind something, and I'm like, what did you do to get there? And then they're building an Optimus robot, which has the self-drive in a humanoid form, so it can literally look at you just like a Terminator would and go assess you as a threat or not.
Yeah. Well, I always joke about when I bring this up, people are like, oh, just have it drive the car. I'm like, think about it. I don't have to have a cage in there, 200 extra pounds taken out of my car. You just have something else.
Could you, like a robot? Well,
think about it. You don't need any safety anymore.
Oh, okay. I may. Well, okay. So
that's just me playing devil's advocate for when people say that.
No, that's funny as hell.
I'm like, think about the amount of weight I take out of it.
So it's
all driver oriented.
You literally described grudge racing, right? Yeah. They have a jockey that is expendable.
Yep.
And the guy with the money goes, get in that car and bust that guy's ass. And he
80-pound dude in there.
And there is no cage. And like my car, my GT500, had no cage when it was running 8.1s. And it was a grudge car. It was called the tax collector. It was whatever. So you basically described that. Some guy that's expendable, you don't care about a cage, go run a number. I've actually made jokes on my live stream that said, a trained monkey could drive a 10R80 car down the track.
Yeah.
You just say, Coco, when that light hits yellow, just floor it.
Well, have you ever driven a car that is expendable which is an RC car.
Yes.
You crash
You
them.
smash it up.
As you go 90 miles an hour and then take a turn and suddenly the thing just crashed and you're like, darn.
Like, darn, then you put it together and do it again. But when you
Yeah.
have a $300,000 or $100,000 car, you're like, yeah. I get it.
But it's similar, you get to, once it's expendable.
Well, someone did ask him, can these robots eventually work their way up to be like sex slaves? And I never even thought of that. He's like, absolutely.
Well, it would only make sense because what was the first thing that happened once the internet came out?
Porn.
Instant.
Instant.
First thing.
See, you weren't around when, you were, but let's say 90, so you were.
I'm 94.
94. Okay, so 97, 98, 99, it was so raw, and it was like people getting their heads chopped off, things getting burned, and then porn everywhere.
Yep.
Then people started to pay for it, and then it came back to be free. And yeah, like the first thing people do is want to bang something. And when I'm like, imagine, then I had so many questions about the physicality of it, and I was like, I'll get that to some other time. And what if they built AI into it?
Yeah.
It learns you.
It's the early adaptation of most things because like it's a big industry. It's like one of the biggest industries of like profit on the internet.
That I'm optimistic about. The future stuff I'm super optimistic about. I'm huge into the space travel stuff. I watch every launch. I'm a psycho with the live streams. I'm up on all that stuff. The self-drive stuff is cool, but I'm not like a Tesla fanboy. It's cool, but I'm not a super hardcore fan. But the future is I am optimistic about the technology, but then you think about my main hobby, and I wonder how that's going to all fit in. And unless I keep everything analog and old and as it is right now, I don't think I'm even interested. And I think I've become one of those guys that is just not interested in anything that's new, especially on Ford side.
Yeah.
It's like, are you interested in the upcoming anything from any manufacturer? Like, I can't wait to see the new 3TS, whatever. Like,
I just know, I know that all of the new stuff is very unlikely to be faster than any of the old stuff. And if we're progressing backwards, how am I going to be excited?
Exactly.
Because even like the twin turbo C8s, they're not faster than most pro-charged C7s.
You mean the current ones? Like
yeah.
Okay,
like the
you're
people
right.
that twin turbo the C8s,
Right.
they don't impress.
They're not super fast.
They're not writing home about. Like they're not that impressive.
Right.
Like okay, cool, but they're like whatever 890s, but it's not enough.
That's not enough.
It's not near enough to really excite somebody that already owns a 7-second car.
And I think that's our skewed sense of speed.
Yeah.
Because we're like sevens to you is fast, but not blazing
But
fast.
the Coyote guys do it so easily.
Yeah.
So
we're spoiled that way.
It's skewed, but it's not. Like it's really only money. It's not like you have to find the right guy and
do you hate
do
that
the right
about
things.
our hobby? Do you dislike that about our hobby? That no matter what you know or don't know, if you have enough money, you can bust everyone's ass.
I don't mind it. I think it definitely helps progression a little bit because you can watch the guys with all the money pave the way.
Oh, I get that.
First one through the door gets bloody type of thing.
Okay, that's good.
Somebody went out there and broke 200 6R80s.
Yes.
Before trickled down to the guy that can go run 900
sense.
passes without.
But let's say
taking
the
his
guy
out.
that gets into it and builds a notchback. You're like,
yeah.
Well, so and then. And I'm not hating on people that have money. That's awesome. I hope to be one of those guys. But there is a sense of the grassroots guy that does it from out the mud, let's just say, and gets to the zenith, gets to the top of the mountain, and then some guy decides, I'm going to build one.
Yeah.
And beats your ass, like, no problem. And you're like, what the hell?
Well, I talked to somebody about this the other day. We were talking about like winning the lottery, and I was like, I probably wouldn't drag race. It wouldn't be as fun.
Why would I drag race?
It just wouldn't be fun.
Right.
If you had like a legitimately unlimited budget to build like a streetcar or something, like it just would not be fun.
You get $100 million in your bank account. What's the first thing you're doing?
Probably going to the mountain.
Okay. After the mountain, afterwards, you got your garage, everything what do you do? What do you do? Do you grow this? Do you grow this? Do you become more in tune, more podcasting? What do you do?
Yeah, that's probably what I would do. I would probably just have people come to the mountain, sit down and talk.
Seriously, and that's where I'm at. That's why I'm here. Because once I saw your podcast, I went, I want to do that, and maybe I can help him, and he can help me. And I think we've never talked, and I'm like, this will be interesting. I think we're going to bro out. It'll be good. And I'm like, I want to do this. And every time I do my live stream, there's a huge satisfaction that comes over me. And when I get in my car, I go, F this thing, screw this thing. I hate, But if I didn't have the day-to-day interaction with people, customers, which again, I love them, but it takes away from your hobby. That's why I always tell people, don't make your main passion your job, because you just hate it. Like, I know a lot of people that were welders and they had a main gig, and then they quit that and then did welding as their main gig, and they hated it. Like, now I got people telling me what to do, as opposed to me, look what I can do, and then I would sell 2 or 3 of them and be happy. And I think the podcast / live stream stuff it's a passion I have that has overtaken the racing stuff. I'd rather just test my car, have some fun tinkering, but competitive racing, like if you're loaded, you wouldn't race anymore.
I think it would be less enjoyable. I think it would be like, if you could just go out there and buy your way to the victory, which there's not anybody out there that's so loaded that they could just like completely buy their way into any victory. It's hard for everybody, but when you're talking, almost $1 billion Powerball win, you could buy your way into any victory of a streetcar class.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's not going to be that difficult. I could give you the formula. It's I could tell you the people to talk to at least.
Correct.
And as long as you're not a complete idiot, you could make it happen.
I agree with that, and I don't think that's a negative for the sport. If there's a rich guy that's getting after it, I just think it takes the wind out of the sails of people that are grassroots and almost hate people with money. Like, I'm like, I don't hate the guy for being successful. I just think he took a shortcut, and I'm almost like, damn, I've been doing this for 10 years, cut my teeth in this stuff, and this guy just comes in out of nowhere, bam, runs a number, and now he's top dog.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly kind of smart. Like, the guy that's 50 years old, that's like, I did a construction company, and now I'm drag racing. It's like, yeah, you did it right.
Exactly. So I tell people, don't race when you're young, because it is a money loser. And I didn't race competitively. I was broke most of my life. I'm a late bloomer in all aspects. So when I started to get a little bit of money, I was like in my 40s. And people are like, oh, that's old. I'm like, not really. You don't feel old when you're 40. You're like, I feel the same. I'm just know more stuff. And then when I was able to throw some money into some of the cars, I was like, okay, cool. And then I would think to myself, imagine if I hadn't messed around with cars when I was in my 20s. I'd have a super nice house. I'd be in a better position. But now, things are okay. But you wonder what could have been if you would have just hustled on your money, and then when you can, get after it and go racing when you can afford it. Because a lot of guys that build a company need a tax write-off. And they're like, I got $300,000 a year to burn. Let's go racing.
And then at that point, they can do it. You live it up. Go freaking enjoy it. And back to the stuff with the podcast is, I hope that more car guys start doing this stuff, and more people, like, because if you look at like comedy scene, everyone has a podcast in the comedy world. Everyone. And they all do well, and they all go on each other's. That's why I'm hoping that more people do this, because my thought is a rising tide rises all ships. If I can be on somebody else's, somebody else can be on mine. Kind of just goes around like that. So
like, I was planning, like,
long term.
Exactly, long term. Like, Brian Luna has one called Autopreneur, and he has a lot of Houston people on his stuff. But I wish he would cross-platform stuff. Like, he knows the LS and stuff, but I wish he had like import guys on that normally wouldn't be seen by Mustang guys. Yeah. Mustang guys are in a bubble. Like, they're in there. And the moment you bring someone else from another realm, you go, oh, okay. But you almost have to like the host first to go, okay, why is he bringing him on?
That's true.
Why do I think he finds him interesting? And once we kind of cross, like, who knows what's going to happen with this one, but I'm hoping it's met well, but if not, no big deal.
Yeah, people are listening this far in, they're listening to the whole thing.
So I've always wondered what can happen if people in this industry did that more. And I've always thought the live stream would help, and then podcasting would help, and then being on each other's stuff would help. And I'm like, let me get over there. It's a 3-hour ride. We'll go over there and talk some shit for a little bit. So no, I hope it does well, because you've had some really interesting people on, and I'm like, man, I got to get on that early, because I don't want to be like, when he's huge, I'm like, can I get on, man?
I hope that it continues to grow for sure, of course. I mean, obviously, but it's it's nice to be able to put a light to people that aren't on YouTube all the time, because there's so many cool shop owners out there.
Dude.
And cool racers. And I hope people trust me when I have somebody on, like, hey, you should watch this even if you don't know this guy's name, because I'm not going to have just like random people on that aren't interesting.
Yeah. And if you keep your circle small, then, and you already know everything about this person, and you're like, okay, expanding. I had some people on that had never been on YouTube or anything, and people love them, especially Southern guys with a drawl. They just talk a certain way, and people love them. Like Joel Steele, he's a stick shift guy, and he's just like talking that shit. And I was like, wow, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I loved it. And he just went. Then I had Ben Stoner, who was a GT350 Fat House Fab guy. He was great. So I think it's important to have people from different platforms on that normally you wouldn't come across, and I think it'll grow. And again, you don't have to talk car stuff. We talk AI stuff most of the time.
I have a lot of other interests besides just cars.
What would be your number two? If cars was number one, I don't even think cars are number one, are they?
I would say cars are number one. I would say like I get very interested in like businesses and stuff and that kind of like separate mindset, but also like the farming and sustainable living stuff. I have a lot of animals. You saw
I saw that.
Tortoise out there.
I was like, what the fuck?
There's a bunch of chickens out there, fish tanks and stuff. Like a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I have a big fish tank that it had like 40 tilapia in there until just recently. Okay. But yeah, like that kind of stuff is very interesting to me. They had a tragedy and died when it froze.
Oh no! Yes, it did get cold up here.
Yeah. Oh. But that kind of stuff it's like a different level of like learning.
I had no idea. So I forgot. See, in South Florida, it didn't get under 40.
It's a different environment up here.
Totally different, and you wouldn't think so. And I just literally just want to cross it up a little bit, and it's like
10-degree difference.
Yeah, 10-degree difference. And I was like, wow, it froze up there. And the Lunds are somewhere up here, Tampa area, and they're like, yeah, it's freezing. And I'm like, it's 55 here, and they're like, yeah, it's totally different. So when people say Florida, I'm like, where? Like
3 Floridas.
Yeah, there's literally like the center, west, east, and then what do they call it, the Panhandle? Like,
whatever happens over there.
I don't know what happens over there.
I just drive through.
Do they have electricity?
Yeah, whatever happens on the Panhandle. I think there's some oil rigs out there.
People in Pensacola like shit.
The 10 guys in Pensacola.
Yeah, so when people say, Alex, I want to move to Florida, I go, where? They go, Pensacola. I'm like, stop it.
That's not Florida.
That's not Florida. It's South
Louisiana
Georgia.
or Alabama. Whatever.
It's something. I'm like, that is not Florida. So it is interesting when people say Florida, and I'm like, you need to really pick and choose. Like I tell people all the time, South Florida is there's a lot of money. There's a big mix, but Palm Beach County is New York. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. I don't know much about Tampa, Braden. What would you say, especially lately, like the dynamic is between, is there a huge difference between Bradenton, Tampa, and Sarasota?
I would say it's all pretty similar mix. Like it's all kind of newer people, I think, in most of those areas.
Right.
Like it's not people that have been here for that long for the most part. So it's just anybody who recently wanted to move here in the last like 5-10 years.
They end up in this part.
They end up in this whole like greater Tampa area.
And what do you think about like Orlando, New Smyrna, Kissimmee, besides it being Puerto Rico?
I try to avoid Orlando like the plague. Like the plague, I try to avoid Orlando.
Because Orlando's just, it's Puerto Rico to me. And I'm like, okay, it's a Kissimmee, like the Puerto Rican flags everywhere. I'm like, okay, whatever. It looks familiar, but I'm like, it's so big and it's odd to me. It's just odd where
spread out. It's weird. Like I try to avoid it. I think it's probably the older part of Florida, but it's Disney. It's
the mouse. Yeah. He's everywhere. He's selling cash for gold.
Yeah.
He's outside of CVS.
Disney.
It's Disney. So yeah, if you like Disney, Orlando is your wheelhouse. Well, no, yeah, it is an interesting dynamic kind of coming over here and then talking about that. And when you said freeze, I'm like, freeze? I'm like, oh yeah, the tilapia. Yeah. So you're more interested in a lot of the farming stuff, self-sustainability stuff, off-grid type stuff?
I love that kind of stuff just because it's so, it is like building a car. Like it takes the patience and the energy and like, I always have this opinion that car guys, we like to do difficult things just because we're stubborn and idiots and like, if it's like, oh, you got to roll that boulder up a mountain, a bunch of car guys will be like doing it. Yeah, okay, cool. Like this is fun. I like this.
Yeah, it is interesting to take the hard way to things, and I guess it's the struggle because
We like it. We
Yeah,
like the
imagine we
struggle.
do all this. Spend I don't know. Would you say you have 100,000 in this car?
I would say so.
Okay,
yeah.
so let's say you have
With
100,000
hours and
right,
everything. Oh, yeah.
cumulative.
Shit, oil changes and stuff, and
Exactly.
it adds up quick.
And then you go, I do this to get 4 7-second paths, 28 seconds of fun a weekend, or potentially. And you're like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah. Oh, there's way better things that you could be doing for entertainment, for sure. I think there's a video of Jay at Real Street that summed it up the best. He was at a half-mile event, and he was in the midst of crashing the car. Like, the car was, like, in the grass, going sideways.
The green Supra.
I think it was his gray one.
Okay.
And he dumped the chute, and in the midst of the car, like, losing control, he goes, there's got to be a better way to have fun. You can hear him, like, rethink all of his decisions.
But why do we go back and do it again? Like,
We're stubborn.
I'm still blown away that Okay, Senior made a great comment one time. We were at World Cup. He had just done a big bumper dragging wheelie, split the front end. It was just like, he goes, you know the best way to become a millionaire? Drag racing is start off with $2 million.
Yep.
And I go, then why do we keep doing it? But, you know, it's just, he keeps doing it. Like, his Grey Goose is so badass. Like, if you get under that car, you go, oh my God, this thing is dumb. And I'm like, why'd you do this? He's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know why I do things. And then the Blue Goose is ridiculously as dumb. It's literally 2 Billy badass cars. And I look at him and I'm like, you know, you drive your Escape more. And he's like, yeah, but it's almost like we don't know why we do this, but we do. And you almost have to have, like, does your wife look at you sometimes and go, why do we do this? Like, what the hell are we doing? Like, what's
That's
wrong
why,
with you?
like, I tell people, marry a car guy. They have endless patience.
They're not cheating on you. They're in the garage.
No.
They're in the garage.
And they have all the patience in the world because you got to have it. If you're sitting in the lanes for 4 hours making back, you could go out there, spin 4 passes in a row with 3 hours in between.
Yep.
And you're still just sitting there waiting for your next one, hopelessly optimistic.
Right. It'll
that
happen this
somehow
time.
this one will be better.
Yeah, but then the problem lies that it's funny. If you had to choose, you'd probably choose the car.
I mean,
Not you particularly, but the car guy.
I'll tell her, like, hey, the car's going to be there no matter what I do.
Oh, okay. That's a good way of putting it.
It's going to be
Because
sitting in the garage no matter what I do.
I remember a girl I was dating one time. She said something about her kid. She goes, no matter what happens, my kid comes first. I go, so does my car. And she looked at me like I'm a psycho. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, I get it. Your kid comes first. It shouldn't even be said. But the fact that she said it almost to like slight me, I'm like, oh, my car comes first. And she was like looking at me like I'm a psycho. And I'm like, see, when someone tells you something that is implied, it doesn't feel all that good, does it? So yeah, car guys are a special breed. We're stubborn, but we're loyal, typically.
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, I don't see too much of that kind of drama in the car world.
No, like
We're not investment bankers.
Yeah,
We're not in like those kind of worlds, you know?
Yeah, like it is interesting. Like
It's very blue collar.
if you were to analyze like the brain pattern of a car guy, I wonder what other industry you can like attribute that to. Like what other kind of person is similar, like in brain pattern? Someone that knows something is like not working, but you still are at it, like nonstop.
It's very similar to like early humans. Like just continually doing the same thing.
I have you done that in this car or in any car where you go out there and do the exact same thing hoping for a different result?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm definitely the definition of insanity. I mean, I come home and then I check the same nuts and bolts every time.
I mean, I get that.
But it's like that is like the insanity part. You're checking the same stuff. You're doing the same thing. It's just repetition, and somehow we enjoy it.
Yeah, like I'll be honest with you. I had never really worked on cars a lot until, like, how difficult you do all your work on this car, and then maybe once in a while, like
Yeah.
just the welding and stuff you don't do. So I had people working on my cars, and then they were just failing me, and I'm like, I can't get anyone on the East Coast to work on my car. I have the money. Nobody wants to work on the car, so I started doing it myself. So I did the Sprag on the GT500 that pulled the motor out recently, and I got a huge sense of satisfaction when it was done that I hadn't had before. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is what they love. Because I'm trying to psychoanalyze why car guys are car guys. And I don't know, for whatever reason, after I took the motor out, took the headers out, put it on a stand and shipped it off, and I was like, I'm very satisfied.
It's kind of like an expensive trip to go golfing with your buddies. Because like when I go to the racetrack, you know, there's 10 of us standing around, we're talking, we're bullshitting for 6 hours a day. It's legitimately like going golfing,
Okay.
but way more expensive. Because most guys that go golf, they don't care to golf.
No, they just want to drink
They
and
just
hang
want
out.
to hang out, drink, drive the golf cart around, and hang out with their buddies.
Right.
And it's very similar aspect. We haven't admitted to ourselves that we should just go do something cheaper together.
I don't think it'll make you happy though.
No, probably not.
Yeah, like if you get into like, I don't know. I don't even know anything. Like RC racing, it's boring. I bought a nice RC car and I literally zipped it up and down the street twice. I'm like, this is stupid. Put it back in. It's sitting there just looking at me. I guess the camaraderie is what I miss because I haven't had it since I moved out of Massachusetts. I had the friends I grew up with, like legit people. Like it's so hard to find legit good people in the automotive industry lately, for me anyway. Like Jake is like one of my best friends, but he's married and he's got things going on. So when I go to the track, it's by myself. And I jack the car up by myself and I'm under it by myself and I trailer it there by myself and I go home by myself. And I'm like, the people that you thought were, and maybe it's because of the position I'm in where they're like, have you, and I've come across this, known people that want to get to know you just because of what you can provide them, not because of who you are? Oh, he's got connections with Holly. Hey, what's up? And you're like, man, get out of here.
Maybe. I haven't found a whole lot of that. I'm sure it's definitely happened before.
Right.
But yeah, it's not like super rampant. I'm sure you deal with that too.
That's most of the people that come across.
Yeah.
It's very rare to come across like a genuine good person that's like, and I don't know if that's a regional thing because maybe on this side it's completely different, but it's just like, what can Alex help me get? Mm-hmm. Can Alex tune my car? Can Alex get me a blower kit for cheap? And I'm like,
so the other flip side is I'm like a loner by heart. Like I'm perfectly fine. Like a great example, I was at a race up in Orlando, big race, and it was midnight. I was at the top end of Orlando. All the rigs were gone. I was there alone in the finals.
okay.
Wife wasn't there. She wasn't there that weekend. I pulled into the water box. Not a single person around knew me. In the
No one's
finals
lining
at
you up,
midnight,
nothing, just you.
Just me. And people were like, "Oh man, like, sorry." I'm like, "I'm just racing. Like this is normal. Like you know, sometimes like the people that you were racing with went out early and they went home, and they should. I wouldn't expect them to stay there till 1 a.m.
That is interesting because when I do get help, because I'm usually like that all the time, and I think I reject people because I just like, I've had enough people that just, I want to go by myself. And then I get there, when someone tries to help, I go like, what's wrong with you? Like, who are you? Like, I'm lining you up. And I'm like, oh, thanks, appreciate that. So it is appreciated when it is genuine. And when it is genuine, I appreciate it and I, keep those people in my life. But, when you come across a certain type of people, South Florida specifically is like that.
There's a lot of, I hate to say there's a lot of scammers down there, but like, don't buy a used car in South Florida.
Oh, hell no. Don't buy a used Mustang. Anything in South Florida, like from I don't know, Boca down. Don't even
buy
bother.
used cars down
there. Don't even bother. Yeah, it's a piece of junk. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like, well, I can get over on you, and you see it and you don't react to it. You just say, I'm not dealing with them.
Yeah, and I help a lot of people. Like if my buddies call me up at midnight and their car's broken,
I'm
like,
there.
I get in the trailer. Like I don't care.
Yep.
Not expecting things from people because I'm comfortable in what I have enough to not be trying to get one over on somebody.
Right.
I wouldn't say karma, but it kind of is karma is not worth trying to get something over on somebody.
Right.
Even though like karma is kind of a cheesy word to use.
It is cheesy, but it's apt. It's like the proper word to use. Like you don't want to have anything bad happen to you because you tried to get. And look, I've been really good about trying to help people. Like I've gone out of my way in certain occasions to help people in the tuning community, only to get be left hung out to dry later. Mm-hmm. And I go, okay. So then when I don't help them, they're like, well, you're just selfish. And I'm like, so it is interesting to be in tuning because you ask yourself sometimes, do the people actually give a crap about you or they just want you to tune their car? And when you come down to that, if you even have to ask yourself that question, you're already kind of like salty.
You can often tell how high somebody will raise your flag when you tune their car. Like some people will raise the Lund flag really high. Mm-hmm. Some people will just kind of like do their thing.
Right.
You know?
And what I've noticed is like, let's say a person, I tune them, they were all chummy and good and we're texting and everything's fine. They disappear for 2 years and then they hit me back up when they have another Mustang. And I'm like,
how does things work when like, so somebody's at the track, you remote tune their car, but then so-and-so's at the track, plugs into it to help them out. Other tuner shop,
Well,
you know what I mean?
well,
Like what happens with that? Like,
so he can't read the tune. He can read a data log.
so it's locked?
Yeah, we lock the crap out of it.
Yeah, I was unaware how
Okay,
locked
sorry.
they
So
are, I
yeah,
guess.
there's an encryption on it so that
I know you can lock, like my ECU can be locked as well.
Yeah, so what happens is, this happens a lot. So for instance, let's say 6R80, just like 6L80, are difficult to tune. So is 10R80. So when, let's say Lund figures out the 10R80 shifting and it is crisp, it sounds pop, 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 really nice. And everyone else is like, flaring and sounding like crap. You go, okay, cool. So you lock up your tune so that if someone tries to draw it, it just throws a checksum error, or it just says, nope. So what happens 90% of the time is those people plug in and send it off to a company, or they have some genius try to, whatever. Funny thing is, there's ways of putting Easter eggs everywhere. Like you make a value that makes no sense. Only to you it doesn't make sense. So I caught a pretty well-known tuner doing that with our tuning. I was on a dyno. I heard this car hit a limiter. It just hit like a throttle cut, and he was just testing for power. And he goes, hey, what's wrong with my car? And I'm like, can I data log it? He goes, well, my tuner doesn't want you to plug into the OBD2 port. And I go, oh, so maybe he thinks because his file is open that I'm going to draw it. I'm not interested in the draw. He goes, no, he definitely doesn't want you. Okay, fine. So he did another pull, hit a limiter. I'm like, sorry, thanks for the $100. See you later.
Yeah.
So he leaves and then later contacts me. He goes, I drew the file. Here it is. So I look at it and immediately know it's a Lund tune based on the Easter eggs. And I go, who tuned you? And he told me the name and I went, So it happens and we lock it as much as possible. But look, if you're smart enough, you're going to do it. But the problem is then you can't see what we did. So let's say, for instance, why is the transmission shifting that good? You can't see it unless you have access. So yeah, we do. But let's say, to answer your question, sorry, I get off kilter. If someone wants to get tuned by data logged by somebody else because we're not there to help, then you're seeing half of the equation. You're seeing what the car is doing, but not what it's commanding. I have the tune, that's one part of the puzzle. The data log is the remaining part of the puzzle. So if you only see the log as a tuner, you go, oh, it's killing timing.
Yeah.
And then I go in the tune and go, no, I'm only commanding that much timing. So we don't get mad about it. We would just say, well, that tuner can't see what we're doing unless he's trying to draw the file. And we've heard reports of tuners trying to draw the file. Like literally, I've had guys on IG say, yo, check out this message. The guy says, sell me your tune, meaning I'll draw it how much you want. And he's like, nah, I'm not gonna let him plug in. I have literally a video of me putting a master lock on my OBD2 port as a joke that, you can't, I'm locking my tune. So it is interesting that people still do that, but you know how many people do that and have a full career by drawing a tune? Oh,
using other people's tunes, yeah.
Tons.
I know it happens in all aspects. And it's weird because like, I feel like there's not that kind of tuning beef or drama in the Dodge world.
Right.
Like, I don't think there's like,
well,
I don't know if like there's huge Dodge tuners like that, because like there's huge
there's
Chevy tuners.
There's a couple of, okay, not huge.
Like the Chevy tuning and the Ford tuning is like huge, and there's so much like beef and drama in that. But like the Dodge guys kind of seem like they're just doing their own thing.
Oh.
I know, like
I could go so many places with the Dodge, but I don't know. I think there's two that I know that tune, but I don't think they beef with each other. I just think they just do whatever, and they're just happy to just tune. But I don't. You're right. I don't see any beef in the Dodge world, but I don't know why. It's such a popular
not rampant
platform.
like it is in ours.
Right. It's like a popular platform. I don't know why there wouldn't be beef, and I don't know if they lock it. Like I don't know if I can go into, if I'm a Dodge tuner, can I get an order tune from Homeboy, plug in and go, oh, I see it. Let me manipulate it. Unless he has the ability to lock it. Our locks are pretty intense. Like you really have to know some coding to get it. So that means that if we know you took it, we know you know coding or know someone that knows coding, so we can kind of surmise.
Well, like with the
who's
Pro
right.
EFI, it's kind of just like a password. It's just a password protected tune.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
It's a standalone.
It's a standalone.
Yeah, you just type in your password.
Oh, I don't know. So
Like Alpha will remote in while I'm at the track and he'll just type in his password and he can tune it.
wait, so is your stuff connected to the internet all the time?
I'll just like tether to my computer and then plug right in and you can do everything.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so it's similar to like, well, Lund won't do that live. Lund will see a data log and send you a revision.
Yeah.
To do it live, I'd have to like be there, unfortunately.
We don't always do it live, but like if I'm having like an issue, he can remote in. I can be like checking the engine bay, like checking plugs, coils, like that kind of stuff,
Okay.
checking boost controller. He can be like bumping boost controller, like, you know, turning on the solenoids so we can like go through
okay.
stuff
Okay, so yeah, I guess that
for
I think,
diagnosis.
I think the UGR guys, whatever they use, it's a similar setup where it's
Mm-hmm.
always data logging, and if the customer's smart, it's always tethered to his phone, and they're always adjusting. They're like, yeah, you're good. I just sent you a revision, and I'm like, imagine you're just driving one day, and I looked at your log, and it's a little lean, so I threw some fuel at it. You're good. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
It is, because it just auto populates on their email.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows up, and it's just like, oh, a data log. Here you go. I'm like, no, that's crazy stuff.
Well, I would hate to cut this short because it was a great conversation, but I think for time's sake, we have to.
Yeah, look, you're either gonna have 2 episodes or 1 3-hour.
It's just going to be a long one.
Okay.
I'm not doing part 2s unless you come back over.
Gotcha. Not problem.
That'll be when there's a part 2 is when
Gotcha. Cool. No, thanks
eventually
for
you come
having me.
back.
I really I hope the podcast takes off. It's been excellent to watch. So
Thank you.
hopefully have some more interesting people from the industry on, and I'll be watching for sure.
Appreciate it, man. So if you want to check out your stuff, where to go?
You can go to Alejandro Flores on YouTube, or you can do YDBT, and that's an easy way of remembering it. It'll take you to my YouTube channel, my Twitter, and
Your old
my
episodes
Instagram.
now?
Yeah. I'm starting to put stuff up on Spotify, on Podbean. So you'll Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, YDBT for life, YDBT for life, and you should be able to find me.
Sweet. Well, thanks for coming on, man. That'll do it, guys. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.
See you later.